Chapter 1207 Leaving Aperture Ordeal. Saint 5 Dan Leaving Aperture Realm was the level where a cultivator's primordial spirit gained the ability to leave its physical body and survive for a prolonged period of time independently, but in order to do so, the cultivator had to undergo the Leaving Aperture Ordeal first. While artifacts were able to reach the Leaving Aperture Realm as well, their spirits were unable to make the metamorphosis into primordial spirits. As a result, unlike normal cultivators, they were unable to leave the confines of their body. Nevertheless, they would still gain the ability to grow hands and legs, granting them greater ease and flexibility of movements. The Golden Origin Cauldron had already been at half Leaving Aperture Realm prior to the upgrading, and after having the black gold crystal ore fused into it, it successfully overcame its previous bottleneck and drew in the Leaving Aperture Ordeal. Dark clouds swiftly gathered in the area, causing the darkness to spread. A powerful gale raged, tearing apart the roof of the forging hall, exposing the room to the world. This was the first time that most blacksmiths in the room had witnessed an artifact's Leaving Aperture Ordeal, and they stared at the sight before them intently as their bodies trembled in excitement. Catcher! A deafening peal of thunder rumbled as countless blue streaks of lightning tangled with one another within the dark clouds. Why would the cauldron draw in the Leaving Aperture Ordeal despite having yet to be tempered? Does Zhongsha not intend to temper it? Guild leader Qin asked in confusion. There were 3 main steps to smithing and upgrading a weapon. First, the fusing of the ores to form a suitable alloy. Second, the forging of the alloy into the correct form. Third, the tempering of the formed artifact to enhance its durability and flexibility. Most blacksmiths would be able to grasp the first 2 steps with sufficient practice. What was truly difficult to master was the third one. Whether an artifact would be able to achieve true perfection depended on how well the blacksmith was able to conduct the tempering. There were many techniques used in the forging process that he was not able to understand, so he had thought that the tempering stage would be an eye-opener for him as well, allowing him to catch a glimpse into the prowess of a true genius blacksmith. Yet, before the tempering could be carried out, the Leaving Aperture Ordeal had already fallen. It's not that he doesn't intend to temper his cauldron, he is going to temper it now, Master Lin Jie replied hoarsely, his quivering tone reflecting his disbelief at the situation. His intending to temper it now? Wait a moment, Master Lin Jie, you don't mean that. Zhongsha intends to use the Leaving Aperture Ordeal to temper his cauldron? Guild leader Qin froze upon hearing those words, and his eyes bulged in disbelief. Master Lin Jie nodded. That seems to be the case. He's probably intending to use the lightning to temper his cauldron to perfection. But the devastating might of the Leaving Aperture Ordeal is one that could incapacitate even true Leaving Aperture Realm expert. To temper an artifact that rose to Leaving Aperture Realm just a moment ago with the Leaving Aperture Ordeal is utter madness. Guild leader Qin exclaimed in shock. At this moment, he really felt that Zhongxian had gone insane. In the Leaving Aperture Ordeal, one would have to undergo a lightning tribulation, which was the nemesis of souls and spirits alike. Even true Leaving Aperture Realm experts would cower from it, not daring to take it head-on. Even though the deceased Pavilion Master Go had long reached the Leaving Aperture Realm, he still had not dared to undergo the Leaving Aperture Ordeal due to his old age, fearing that his soul would dissipate. While everyone was eager to avoid the Leaving Aperture Ordeal, that fellow was actually intending to use the lightning to temper his artifact. Wasn't he being too gutsy? That was truly playing with fire. The slightest mistake could very well render all the effort he had put into upgrading his artifact futile. More importantly, if the Golden Origin Cauldron failed to withstand the lighting ordeal, it could very well explode on the spot. That would be equivalent to the explosion of a Leaving Aperture Realm cultivator. The entire blacksmith guild and everything in its vicinity would be utterly obliterated. Elders, begin evacuating everyone from the area. Guild leader Qin could not afford to take this risk, so he quickly issued commands. Even if the blacksmith guild was destroyed, as long as their men remained, they would at least still be able to rebuild it. But the problem was that all of the 7-star blacksmiths in Qingyuan City were currently gathered in this room to listen to Master Lin Jie's lecture. If all of them were killed due to this, the Qingyuan Empire Blacksmith Guild would really become a thing of the past. Yes. Everyone, hurry up and flee. Quick, Contact the Master Teacher Pavilion and have them dispatch some personnel here. If something goes wrong, it could end in a disaster. The other blacksmiths also swiftly came to realize the grave danger they were in, and their faces turned ghastly pale. They hurriedly rushed out of the blacksmith guild and dashed into the distance. Soon, only Zhongxian, Chu Xiong, Master Lin Jie, and guild leader Qin were left in the room. In this moment, Chu Xiong's face was pale in fright as well, and his body would not stop trembling. He quickly turned his gaze toward Zhongxian, only to see the latter standing with his hands behind his back, looking at the sparks of lightning in the sky calmly. Not only was there not the slightest hint of fear to be seen on his face, there was even a tangible vibe of excitement around him. Zhongshe. Chu Xiong gulped as he called out to Zhongxian in apprehension, perhaps wanting to seek comfort from the other party's words in this unnerving situation. Seeing through Chu Xiong's worries, Zhongxian replied with a light chuckle. There's no need to worry. Just a mere leaving aperture ordeal, the golden origin cauldron will be able to survive it with ease. Normal tempering would be able to further the effects of the black gold crystal or on the golden origin cauldron as well, but the results would not be as pronounced as tempering through lightning. By tapping into the lightning energy in the leaving aperture ordeal, not only would it perfect the fusion between the black gold crystal ore and the golden origin cauldron, more importantly, it would grant the latter the power of lightning as well. The power of lightning would put the golden origin cauldron at a decisive advantage when facing other leaving aperture realm expert. Catcher. While the others were still in a state of shock, the first streak of lightning descended from the heavens. It struck the golden origin cauldron squarely, but surprisingly, the latter managed to absorb it easily without any problems. Its exterior became even more lustrous, and its structure seemed to have become more compact and firmer. Master Lin Jie was astonished by how easily the golden origin cauldron managed to withstand the lightning strike. Given that the cauldron is a Saint intermediate tier artifact, and the black gold crystal ore has been fused into it, it's understandable how its body is able to withstand the first lightning strike easily. But how could its spirit remain completely unharmed? Possessing the yin attribute, spirits and souls were innately weak against lightning. Once the lightning was absorbed into the artifact, the spirit would naturally be devastated by the power of lightning as well, possibly even resulting in its dissipation. Yet, the spirit of the cauldron was completely unfazed by the lightning. In fact, it was even shaking its body gleefully in the air, as if provoking the lightning in the heavens to give it its best shot. Just what the heck was going on? Seeing how frenzied Master Lin Jie was from being unable to comprehend the situation before him, Zhongxian shook his head and explained, the spirit of the golden origin cauldron has been tempered by lightning once in the past, thus granting it some degree of immunity to lightning. While the lightning tribulation in the leaving aperture ordeal isn't weak, it is no longer sufficient to cause significant damage to the golden origin cauldron. Back in their expedition in the Qiuwu Palace, the golden origin cauldron had exposed itself to concentrated streaks of lightning in order to shield the rest of the expedition team from harm. Eventually, its spirit had ended up falling into a dormant state from the immense damage it had sustained. While it had nearly lost its life from the encounter, surviving the ordeal had made its spirit more resilient than ever. Even though there had not been anyone managing the Grade 8 lightning formation then, its might was still something that a leaving aperture ordeal could not compare to. It was due to that experience that Zhongxian dared use lightning to temper the golden origin cauldron. It has been tempered by lightning in the past. Master Lin Jie nodded in realization. Everything made sense if that was the case, but soon, worry surfaced in his eyes. The leaving aperture ordeal is divided into primary stage, intermediate stage, advanced stage, and pinnacle. May I know what realm the golden origin cauldron is at currently? When leaving aperture realm cultivators achieved a breakthrough to primary stage, they would undergo their first lightning ordeal, which consisted of a single streak of lightning. Even though it was only a single streak, its might was not to be underestimated. Nevertheless, if a cultivator successfully withstood it, their primordial spirit would become significantly more resilient once it had recovered from the injuries it had sustained. Fortunately, it would take an ordinary cultivator several decades or even a century in order to cultivate from leaving aperture realm primary stage to intermediate stage, giving them sufficient time to recover from the damage caused by the lightning ordeal. With that, it would become much easier for it to survive the lightning ordeal during their breakthrough to intermediate stage. However, this was different for artifacts. Artifacts could be upgraded several cultivation stages at once. If the Golden Origin Cauldron was upgraded to leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle in a single go, it would have to undergo the primary stage, intermediate stage, advanced stage, and pinnacle lightning ordeals consecutively without any time to recover in between the ordeal. In the face of 4 consecutive lightning ordeals, no matter how powerful the spirit was, its defenses would gradually be worn thin before eventually dissipating. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before replying. Chu Xiong's forging technique is still slightly lacking, so he inevitably made a few minor errors in the forging process. As such, the Golden Origin Cauldron was unable to achieve a breakthrough to leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle. So, it should currently be at advanced stage. While the black gold crystal ore had the incredible effect of raising an artifact's tier, the materials that the Golden Origin Cauldron was made of were simply too weak, thus limiting how much it could be upgraded. Furthermore, Chu Xiong's proficiency in his forging techniques were also slightly lacking as well, so even though there was no error in Zhongxian's guidance, it had still met its bottleneck at leaving Aperture Realm Advanced Stage. Nevertheless, the leaving Aperture Realm Advanced Stage Golden Origin Cauldron was not to be underestimated. At St. 5 Dan, the advancement of every single cultivation stage became incredibly difficult, with bottlenecks at every turn. With the Golden Origin Cauldron's current cultivation and the power of lightning it would wield after its tempering, ordinary leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle cultivators would not be a match for it. Putting aside the Qingyuan Empire, the Golden Origin Cauldron would probably go unmatched even in the Qianchong Empire. Master Lin Jie's lips twitched upon hearing those words, and a worried frown emerged on his face. Leaving Aperture Realm Advanced Stage? Doesn't that mean that it'll have to undergo 3 consecutive lightning ordeals? That will be dangerous. Since the Golden Origin Cauldron had reached leaving Aperture Realm Advanced Stage in a breath, it would have to undergo the primary stage, intermediate stage, and advanced stage lightning ordeal consecutively. Each one would be more fearsome than the last, and to clear all 3 of them was nigh impossible. I know. Zhongxian nodded. However, I believe that my Golden Origin Cauldron will be able to succeed. How could one see the rainbow without weathering the storm? The Golden Origin Cauldron might have appeared immature and unreliable at times, but it was still a spirit that had lived for innumerable years, nourished by the spirit of countless master teachers. Since it had survived the field of lightning back at the Qiuwu Palace, Zhongxian believed that it would surely be able to withstand the leaving Aperture ordeal as well. Boom! While they were still chatting with one another, the second streak of lightning fell. The energy harnessed within this lightning bolt was more destructive than the previous one, and even the air seemed to char from the overwhelming energy it possessed. Catcher. When the lightning bolt struck the Golden Origin Cauldron, the latter shuddered slightly. Under the devastating might of the lightning streak, it was unable to keep itself in the air any longer, and it fell heavily onto the ground, leaving a massive depression in its wake. Even though it was a tough fight, the Golden Origin Cauldron eventually managed to withstand it. Hong long long. As soon as the second streak of lightning came to an end, the third streak fell before anyone could respond. The deep blue third streak of lightning had a width reminiscent of a large water vat, and it ripped through the air with incredible momentum to strike the Golden Origin Cauldron. Seeing the astounding might of the lightning, the composure of Zhongxian's face finally cracked, revealing a hint of anxiety. T. The lightning ordeal is stronger than I thought. The Golden Origin Cauldron might not be able to withstand it. As much as he trusted the Golden Origin Cauldron, the third streak of lightning was simply too powerful. If the cauldron took it head-on, there was really a good chance that its spirit would dissipate on the spot. Golden Origin Cauldron, swallow the earth flames and use them to neutralize the might of the lightning, Zhongxian immediately commanded as he flicked his wrist and whipped out a bunch of formation flags. Su 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 su. The formation flags fell into the surroundings of the Golden Origin Cauldron, forming an even more powerful formation to tap into the earth flames underground. Since the lightning was too powerful for the Golden Origin Cauldron to withstand by itself, they would just have to find another power to offset its might. And the strongest power that they could tap at this moment were the earth flames. Xiong xiong. Due to the powerful pull of the formation, Raging earth flames were forcefully dragged from beneath the earth, generating a violet inferno in the area. The Golden Origin Cauldron also knew that it was a do-or-die situation. Struggling out of the depression it was in, it opened its lid and swiftly absorbed the purple inferno into it. Voila! The flames circulated within the Golden Origin Cauldron's body before bursting forth in the form of a fiery dragon. The fiery dragon soared into the sky, clashing straight on with the third streak of lightning. Boom! A powerful shockwave rippled into the surroundings, shaking the heavens and earth alike. In the blink of an eye, the entire blacksmith guild was torn down as if it was a mere sheet of paper. My guild. Guild leader Qin widened his eyes in horror. Didn't you say that you weren't here to crash my blacksmith guild? I gave you permission to upgrade your weapon, and yet, you still ended up destroying my building. How do you expect me to face my predecessors now? Just a reminder, the Qianchong Empire is the strongest conferred empire, whereas the Qingyuan Empire is ranked last. The Qianchong Empire also contains the Sword Lagoon, which the candidates of the Combat Master Halls were vying for a while back. Chapter 1208 Yu Fei's Resolve and Pride. Who? When the third streak of lightning finally dissipated, the ominous clouds in the sky finally scattered, as if they had finally accomplished their mission. The Golden Origin Cauldron also heaved a sigh of relief before slumping weakly to the ground, as if a lump of mud. Having reached the leaving aperture realm, it was finally able to make basic movements like a human, such as walking and holding up items. Zhongxian walked up to the Golden Origin Cauldron and placed his hand on it. A moment later, he heaved a sigh of relief. While the latter was completely drained after withstanding 3 consecutive streaks of lightning, fortunately, its spirit remained mostly unharmed. As long as it rested well, it would be able to recover within 3 months. Of course, if Zhongxian were to treat it personally, its recovery period could be significantly reduced. You should return to the Myriad Ant Hive Nest for now and recuperate under the Saint Body Tree, Zhongxian instructed. The Saint Body Tree that he had planted in the Myriad Ant Hive Nest was exceptionally effective in nourishing souls and spirits. Since most of the damage that the Golden Origin Cauldron had sustained was to its spirit, it would do it some good to cultivate there. Yes, Master. Knowing its own condition, the Golden Origin Cauldron decisively entered the Myriad Ant Hive Nest without any hesitation. After the Golden Origin Cauldron left, Zhongxian turned around to face Chu Xiong. Chu Gongzi, thank you for helping me upgrade my artifact. As a token of my gratitude, I'll give you these ores. Back then, Zhongxian had obtained quite a handful of ores from Emperor Chu Tianxing. While he had used some of them to upgrade the Golden Origin Cauldron, there was still a substantial portion of them remaining. Since Chu Xiong had helped him, the least he could do was give those to him to thank him. Zhongshu, there's no need for that. Instead, I should be the one thanking you. This experience has truly given me a deeper insight into smithing. Chu Xiong quickly waved his hand to turn Zhongxian down. The very experience of upgrading the Golden Origin Cauldron was worth more than any ores or reward. As long as he digested everything that he had done today, his proficiency in smithing would surely improve by leaps and bounds. All right then. Seeing that Chu Xiong was reluctant to accept the ores, Zhongxian did not insist on it either. Considering how the other party was able to fork out a concentrated high-tier spirit stone for an exclusive dance back at the Spring Pavilion, there was no doubt that he came from a privileged family. Thus, it was very likely that those ores did not mean much to him. After settling the matter with Chu Xiong, Zhongxian turned his attention to Guild Leader Qin. Guild Leader Qin, regarding this. I'm really apologetic that I reduced the Blacksmith Guild to this state. He had not expected for such a mishap to happen during the upgrade of the Golden Origin Cauldron either. It was out of goodwill that the other party had allowed him to upgrade his weapon at the Forging Hall, but he had ended up reducing the other party's guild to rubble. No matter what, he had to take responsibility for the damage he had caused. It was truly fortunate that no one had been injured in the incident, otherwise there was no way he would have been able to compensate for that. To make up for your losses, I'll have the Master Teacher Pavilion restore the Blacksmith Guild to its original state, Zhongxian said awkwardly. I'll be counting on Zhongshu then. Guild Leader Qin heaved a sigh of relief. If the Master Teacher Pavilion was willing to help, It probably would not even take a day for the Blacksmith Guild to be restored to its former glory, or even better than that. This outcome was at least still acceptable to him. Yuan Zhongshen nodded. He swiftly sent a message to Wu Shi to inform him of the matter and have him dispatch some men over to help him clean up the mess. Last but not least, he turned his gaze onto Master Lin Jie and said, "I am truly apologetic for having interrupted your lecture. I'll be taking my leave now, so feel free to continue." Master Lin Jie's eyelids twitched. All the blacksmiths have already been evacuated from the place, so who am I to lecture? Furthermore, how am I supposed to lecture them after they have witnessed your exquisite use of smithing? Even if they did not say anything out of politeness, I would still be too embarrassed to lecture them with my half-assed knowledge. If only I knew this would happen, I never would have agreed to come to the Qingyuan Empire Blacksmith Guild to conduct a lecture. Since there is such a formidable expert at the Master Teacher Pavilion, why in the world did they still bother to invite me? Just the thought of it left Master Lin Jie deeply stifled within. After bidding farewell to the crowd at the Blacksmith Guild, Zhongshen did not return to the Master Teacher Pavilion. Instead, he flew out of Qingyuan City and headed to the wooden hut where the Qingtian Emperor had dragged his soul to previously. The area was extremely quiet and isolated, making it appropriate to deal with the problem concerning Vicious there. Who? Flicking his wrist, the Book of Heaven's Path appeared before Zhongshen's eyes. Taking in a deep breath, Zhongshen stretched his hand forward and grabbed it. Voila! The heart and finger sealed within a page in the book slowly materialized. Due to Zhongshen's lack of strength, he had kept Vicious sealed within the Book of Heaven's Path all along, not daring to let him out. However, he had no choice but to let Vicious out this time around in order to allow the latter to undergo the Leaving Aperture ordeal and successfully advance to the Leaving Aperture realm. In any case, Vicious had already submitted part of his soul to him, so he did not have to worry about a betrayal. TZZZZZZZ. As soon as Vicious escaped from the confines of the Book of Heaven's Path, the heart and he finger immediately released extremely concentrated junqi of slaughter. In an instant, it felt as if someone had filled the entire wooden hut with water, making the surroundings incredibly suffocating. Seeing how Vicious was still in the mood to show off, Zhongshen harumphed coldly. "Alright, hurry up and devour the Qingtian Emperor's soul and raise your strength. Otherwise, if the other Vicious in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows notices your presence, he'll surely come after you like a mad dog." "Alright," Vicious answered meekly before swiftly absorbing the Qingtian Emperor's soul. Suppressed within the Book of Heaven's Path, the rate at which he could absorb the Qingtian Emperor's soul was severely limited as well. However, with his release, he was finally able to utilize his strength to its maximum, and it did not take long for him to fully devour the soul. Boom! Gradually, dark, ominous clouds began gathering in the sky. Vicious had successfully invoked his Leaving Aperture ordeal as well. Unlike the Golden Origin Cauldron, even though Vicious had lost his memory, he was still an old monster who had lived for countless years. As fearsome as the Leaving Aperture ordeal was, he was able to clear it as if it was a mere walk in the park. Just like the Golden Origin Cauldron though, he also underwent 3 consecutive lightning strikes, and his cultivation rose all the way to Leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage before gradually sliding to a halt. The Qingtian Emperor was ultimately only a Leaving Aperture Realm Primary Stage Soul Oracle. Even though his soul harnessed an incredible amount of energy in it, it was only sufficient for Vicious to reach Leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage. Seeing that Vicious had succeeded, Zhongshen heaved a sigh of relief. "Good, rest up well. I'll be bringing you to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows in 2 days, so make sure that you are in your peak condition to deal with the other Vicious by then." Now that he had 2 Leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage experts protecting him, he was in a much safer position than before. On top of that, he also possessed substantial strength himself after achieving a breakthrough to Saint 3 Dan Embryonic Soul Realm. As long as the Vicious in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows was not beyond the Leaving Aperture realm, he would be able to deal with the other party without much trouble. Alright, time to return to the Combat Master Hall. Sending Vicious back into the Book of Heaven's Path, Zhongshen flew to the Combat Master Hall. All in all, his trip out had only taken around 8 hours in total, but his fighting prowess and trump cards had increased significantly. Currently, the combat masters from the other 3 combat master halls were in an intensive exchange with the Shenxian faction, and they were currently negotiating for a long-term alliance. Zhongxian decided not to interfere in the matter, allowing the others to sort it out among themselves. Just as he was about to find Hall Master Xing to discuss the matter about heading to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, he suddenly saw Yu Feiya flying over. Zhongshe, Chichi has left Qingyuan City. She has left. Zhongxian was taken aback. Where did she go? It was just earlier in the afternoon that she had asked him to accompany her for an entire day, and he had even spent 2 hours guiding her on pill forging. Why would she suddenly leave? I'm not too sure either. Yu Feiya shook her head. Did she say anything? Zhongxian asked. Even if he had rejected Luo Chichi, the latter was not the sort to leave without saying farewell. Could something have happened to her? She said that she had some matters at home to attend to, so she needed to leave for the time being, Yu Feiya replied. Some matters at home to attend to? Yuan. I saw the introduction letter she submitted when applying to the Master Teacher Academy. She was introduced by the Baiyuan royal family, so I figure that she's the princess of the Baiyuan Empire. I heard a few days earlier that there has been some unrest in the Baiyuan Empire, and several members of the royal family have been injured. Perhaps she has left to resolve the issue, Yu Feiya said. Baiyuan Empire. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before nodding. He seemed to have recalled someone saying that Luo Chichi was the princess of some empire back when he first met her. Baiyuan Empire was a Tier 1 empire, too. While it was significantly stronger than the Hongyuan Empire, it still paled greatly in comparison to the Qingyuan Empire. Noticing Zhongxian's worry, Yu Feiya said, the Baiyuan Empire is just a Tier 1 empire, so their strongest power should be at Saint Wundan Pinnacle. Considering that Chichi is a Saint 2 Dan cultivator, she shouldn't have any problem suppressing the unrest there. Yuan Zhongxian nodded. With Luo Chichi's recent rise in cultivation, it would be easy for her to deal with the unrest in her homeland. Just that, the recent consecutive departures of his students did leave him feeling slightly down within. Yu Feiya hesitated for a moment before speaking. Zhongshe. To be honest with you, I intend to return to the Hongyuan Empire soon, too. You are leaving, too? Zhongxian asked. Yes. I have thought about many things over the past few hours, and I have come to a realization. You are a dragon who will eventually ascend to great heights. Not even the Qingyuan Empire nor even the Empire Alliance will be big enough for you to fully spread your wings. Only a person like the little princess from the Luo clan will be worthy of being by your side, Yu Feiya said with downcast eyes. I am only an insignificant princess from a Tier 1 empire, so it's indeed about time for me to stop my delusions. Rather than pursuing an impossible goal, I might as well focus my attention on my cultivation. Perhaps one day, I can reach a height where I could make you spare a glance at me too. She had always been a decisive person, and since she had made her decision, she would not hesitate in carrying it out. Over the half a year she had been with Zhongxian, deep inside her heart, she had already realized that it was just a matter of time before he became someone completely out of her reach. Watching as the distance between them grew bigger and bigger, she felt more and more anxious and apprehensive. It was not too long ago that he had been weaker than her, but before she could truly grasp it, he had already become a person far nobler and stronger than her. Rather than chasing behind him anxiously and allowing panic to gradually consume her, perhaps it would be much better if she took her leave and calmed down first. Not expecting Yu Feiya to come to a decision so quickly, Zhongxian pondered for a moment before nodding. I understand. Take care of yourself. Even with his state of mind, he was still unable to fully comprehend and resolve the dilemma of love. From his feelings for Luo Ruoxin, he could tell how difficult it was for a person to give up one that they liked. In fact, it was due to his reluctance to lose Luo Ruoxin that he was so motivated to push himself to his limits. Yet, within just a few hours, Yu Feiya had been able to sort out her feelings and sever whatever sentiments she had for him. From this perspective, she was indeed a courageous individual. Most likely, she would become a very capable monarch, possibly achieving accomplishments far exceeding those of her father, Yu Shenqing. Zhongshe, farewell. With a light smile, Yu Feiya turned around and left. Just like her arrival, She left without any hesitation as well. It seemed like she could see through Zhongxian's determination as well. She knew that Zhongxian's heart was only big enough to house the little princess of the Luo clan, and her persistence would only become a nuisance to him. Since that was the case, perhaps leaving was the best decision. At the very least, she would be able to leave behind a good impression in his mind. Leaving the Combat Master Hall, Yu Fei turned around to gaze at the majestic building behind her as she clenched her fists tightly in agitation. Chichi probably has the same thoughts in mind as me. Dealing with the affairs back home is one matter, but she probably doesn't know how she can face Zhongshe after her rejection either. Nevertheless, I should still hasten my footsteps so as to not lag behind her. She and Luo Chichi were both extremely prideful people. It had not been easy for them to find someone whom they loved, but the both of them had ended up being rejected together. It was inevitable that they would find this hard to swallow. If we just followed behind you and accepted your guidance and generosity, even if we eventually caught up with you, we would not be able to harbor any intentions toward you anymore. Indeed, we might be unworthy of you now, but we'll continue working hard. Eventually, with our own strength, we will climb to a height where we will be qualified to stand beside you. This shall be my resolve, as well as my pride. Chapter 1209. Heading to the marshlands of the northern meadows, Zhongxian could see through Luo Chichi and Yu Fei's thoughts, but as he already had someone that he loved, he did not want to get involved with anyone else. While it was inevitable that they would be depressed for a period of time, this was at least better than prolonging their pain. Often, hesitation and indecisiveness were what hurt others the most in a relationship. After watching Yu Fei depart, Zhongxian stood quietly for a moment to calm down his vexed mind before heading to look for Hall Master Xing. What was more important at the moment was to resolve the issue with Vicious. Otherwise, if they let that fellow be, it was only a matter of time before a calamity befell the Qingyuan Empire. Many master teachers would lose their lives, and even Zhongxian would be placed in a deeply precarious position. After all, as a celestial master teacher, his significance was simply too great to the otherworldly demonic tribe. Even if Vicious was trapped at the moment and could not make a move himself, as long as he leaked the news, Zhongxian's good days would be over, and he would be forced into an endless game of hide-and-seek. Upon hearing the story from Zhongxian, Hall Master Xing replied with a resolute gaze, "Our Combat Master Hall is a part of the Master Teacher Pavilion, so there's no way we can stay out of this. Zhongshe, I'll head to the marshlands of the northern meadows with you." Given that an otherworldly demon actually dared make a move against the Master Teacher Pavilion, as the head of the Combat Master Hall, it was his responsibility to step up and vanquish that otherworldly demon. "All right. It'll suffice to bring 2 of your strongest subordinates along. It'll be best for our expedition team to not be too big, or else we will catch the enemy's attention easily. If the enemy notices our presence and guards against us, it'll make our mission more difficult than ever," Zhongxian said. As an existence who had rivaled Kongsha in the past, Vicious was an opponent who they could not afford to underestimate. They might still stand a chance against him if they caught him off guard, but it would be a different story if he anticipated their arrival and made preparations to deal with them. Even if Vicious had fallen from his former glory, the knowledge and experience he had accumulated over countless years were still far beyond theirs. The slightest carelessness against such an opponent could very well cost them their lives. "I understand." Knowing how grave the matter was, Hall Master Xing nodded before taking his leave to make preparations. Not too long later, Hall Master Xing appeared once more with Division Head Liao of the Heart Division and Division Head Wei of the Inner Breath Division behind him. They are the ones who started to cultivate the Vitreous Heart Tempering Sutra the earliest, so their mental resilience could be considered the strongest within the Combat Master Hall at the moment. If the other party is truly a soul oracle who specializes in soul arts, they will be the best candidates to bring with us for the expedition, Hall Master Xing said. Zhongxian nodded in agreement. Soul oracles were skilled in confounding the soul, producing illusions, and the sort to incapacitate one. Those with stronger mental resilience would be in a significantly safer position. As the head of the Heart Division, there was no doubt about Division Head Liao's mental resilience. On the other hand, Division Head Wei was one of the first few to have learned the revised Vitreous Heart Tempering Sutra that Zhongxian had given to the Combat Master Hall, and his mental resilience had been reinforced significantly. Furthermore, the fighting prowess of the duo was second only to Hall Master Xing, so they were indeed the ideal candidates to fight against Vicious. Zhong Xian looked at them grimly. This expedition to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows will be very dangerous. Our opponent possesses means far beyond our imagination, and there's a good chance that you might not return alive. Even so, are you still willing to follow us there? Division Head Wei Yi and Division Head Liao replied without any hesitation. Principal Zhong, we know that. The purpose behind the creation of the Combat Master Hall is to deal with potential threats that humanity may face on the front lines. As long as we are able to protect our brethren, death is nothing to fear. Seeing the resolve that the both of them had, Zhong Xian nodded in approval. Well said. All right, let's head to the Master-Teacher Pavilion to liaise with Wu Shi. Thus, the four of them began making their way over to the Master-Teacher Pavilion. Upon arriving at the Master-Teacher Pavilion, Zhong Xian saw that Wu Shi had also prepared 4 personnel to follow them to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. 3 of them were 7-star pinnacle master teachers, old elders who had been in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion since a very long time ago, so their loyalty was indubitable. The last one was surprisingly a familiar face, Zhong Jiuxiao. Jiuxiao has been to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows before, and he entered the Ghost Cavern as well. I believe that the hiding place of the mastermind behind the Qingtian Emperor is likely related to that mysterious place, so I think that it would be good to have him lead the way for us, Wu Shi said. This. Zhong Xian pondered for a moment before nodding. There was not much about Vicious in the Qingtian Emperor's memory, and it had not been too detailed either. It was not due to the lacking ability of his soul search but because Vicious was a highly capable soul oracle as well, and he had erased the Qingtian Emperor's memory about him in advance in case a mishap happened. As such, the information that Zhong Xian had of Vicious was not complete. Since Zhong Jiuxiao had been to the Ghost Cavern before, it would be for the best if he could lead them there. Zhong Jiuxiao turned to look at Zhong Xian and said with determination, Zhongshe, I know that we had some conflicts in the past, but this matter concerns the future of mankind. As fellow master teachers, I hope that we can put our differences aside and work together on this matter. Bewildered by Zhong Jiuxiao's words, Zhong Xian replied in a daze, my thoughts exactly. Due the affairs concerning Luo Ruoxin, he had inevitably become a little prejudiced against the Zhong clan, thinking that it was a snobbish and domineering clan that paid no heed to the feelings of others. However, seeing how Zhong Jiuxiao was willing to put aside their personal grudges during a crucial moment like this, his opinion of the Zhong clan could not help but change slightly for the better. Just as Zhong Xian was still harboring such thoughts in his mind, the eyebrows of the young man before him shot up as he continued. You might appear to be an insurmountable wall before me at the moment, but it'll only be a matter of time before I surpass you. I'll have you know that I, Zhong Jiuxiao, am a true genius. Surpass me. Once again, Zhong Xian did not expect Zhong Jiuxiao to have such thoughts in mind. He shook his head helplessly and said, whatever pleases you. Surpass him. Perhaps there might really be geniuses in the world who were capable of pulling it off, but without a doubt, the young man before him was not one of such people. Be it in terms of state of mind, fighting prowess, supporting occupations. Forget it, he could probably list on till the end of time. As a human, it was still good to have dreams, no matter how implausible they were. Since everyone is here, let's set off. After confirming the personnel for their expedition, Wu Shi found the strongest aerial saint beast in the Master Teacher Pavilion and had everyone step aboard it. Before long, they were already on their way to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. The marshlands of the Northern Meadows was slightly north of the Northern Meadows city, roughly several million li away from Qingyuan city. Even though the aerial saint beast they were riding on had already reached primordial spirit realm pinnacle, it would still take around 6 days before they arrived at their destination. Seated in the wooden hut at the back of the saint beast, Zhong Xian took out a few pills and passed them around. Here are some pills that I have forged specially for this expedition. When we arrive at the marshlands, make sure to swallow one. It'll grant you immunity to whatever poison we will encounter there, and it will help to prevent any soul oracles from possessing your body. All in all, including him, there were 9 people in the expedition to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. Even though their fighting prowess was ranked at the very top of Qingyuan city, Considering that it was vicious that they were going to be dealing with, it would not hurt to be prepared. Yes. The crowd took the pills and carefully placed them into their storage rings. The old adage always holds true, better safe than sorry. The collaborative formation used by the Combat Master Hall isn't too bad, flexible in terms of numbers, executable with any number of combat masters. However, it's a pity that it has quite a few flaws in it. Thus, I improved it a little earlier, and I have jotted down the formula in this book. Look through it quickly and learn it well. Zhongxian flicked his wrist once more to take out a book before passing it over. Most combat masters and master teachers that were associated with a combat master hall or master teacher pavilion would practice a collaborative formation of some kind. To the eyes of ordinary cultivators, their collaborative formation was already plenty formidable, but to Zhongxian, it was filled with so many horrendous flaws that he could barely bring himself to look at it without cringing. Thus, he made use of the time on the aerial Saint Beast to quickly improve on it. You improved our Combat Master Hall's collaborative formation? Hall Master Xing and Division Head Liao turned to Zhongxian with widened eyes. They quickly took the book from Zhongxian to browse through it, and it did not take long for their eyes to redden in excitement and their breathing to hasten in agitation. The collaborative formation of their Combat Master Hall had been refined by many predecessors, and it had long reached a bottleneck where it would be hard for any change to generate a net improvement in it. Yet, after seeing the improved formation that Zhongxian had written down, they realized that they had only been seeing the tip of the iceberg all along. They swiftly browsed through the collaborative formation and memorized it. After which, Zhong Zhouxiao also took a look at the improved collaborative formation, and his face gradually turned paler and paler. Eventually, all the emotions bubbling within him were released with a helpless shake of his head. It seemed like there was no way he could match up to the young man before him in the field of formations. He would just have to find another field to compete against the young man in. Stroking his chest to alleviate the suffocating sensation there, Zhong Zhouxiao consoled himself. Even the most formidable genius will have his flaws. There's no such thing a perfect man in the world, so he's bound to have a weakness, too. With sufficient time, I'll eventually find it. Just as he was about to begin learning the collaborative formation too, Zhongxian suddenly turned to him and asked, "Brother Zhong, you are from the Zhong clan, right? I happen to have a question to ask of you." "Zhongshe, feel free to speak." Zhongxian hesitated for a moment before asking, "I have heard rumors that there's an unparalleled prodigy in your Zhong clan who possesses an exceptionally pure bloodline. May I know if that's true? As the saying goes, know thyself, know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories." Since Zhong Zhouxiao was from the Zhong clan, this was a good opportunity for him to listen into the affairs of the rumored genius of the Zhong clan so that he could make some preparations in advance to deal with him. "I am from a side family in the Zhong clan, so I am not qualified to interfere or learn of the affairs concerning the main family. However, I have heard of the little prodigy you spoke about as well. If I'm not mistaken, he should be 20 this year. The talent that he wields is so great that it is truly not an exaggeration to call it unparalleled." Zhong Zhouxiao hesitated for a moment before adding, "But those are only things I have heard. I have never met the little prodigy before either." The astounding phenomena that had happened along with the birth of the Zhong clan's young master had caused a huge ruckus, making his existence common knowledge among those of the upper tier of the master-teacher continent. As such, it was not a big deal for him to speak of it to Zhongxian. "You have never met the little prodigy before either?" Zhongxian asked with a perplexed frown. "Indeed. To be honest, members of the side family like me don't get many opportunities to interact with the members of the main family," Zhong Zhouxiao said as he sighed deeply. "I heard that the little prodigy of your Zhong clan is engaged to the little princess of the Luo clan. May I know if that matter is true too?" Zhongxian asked. "That? I'm afraid that I don't know much about the matter. The main family doesn't allow members of the side family like me to probe too much into their affairs, and we aren't allowed to speak of the matters in the clan lightly either." Seemingly a little fearful of the Zhong clan, Zhong Zhouxiao was visibly reluctant to linger too much on this topic. "I see. Then, of the disciples of the main family you have seen, how does their talent compare to yours?" Zhongxian asked. "How does their talent compare to me? I am just a mere ant before them. Even if I devote my entire life to cultivation, there's still no way I'll be able to catch up with them. A bitter smile emerged on Zhong Zhouxiao's face as he said these words. He raised his gaze to look at Zhong Xian before continuing. Putting everything aside, Zhongshe, while it is highly possible that there's no cultivator in the history of the Qingyuan Empire who possessed as much talent as you, compared to the disciples of the main family, I fear that you are still severely lacking. I am still severely lacking? Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. As a practitioner of the Heaven's Path divine art, while he dared not say that his rate of cultivation was fast, surely there should have been very few people in the world who would be able to match him. Were there truly people in the world whose talent surpassed even the might of the Heaven's Path divine art? That's right. Zhongshe, it's not that I want to traumatize you, but the more formidable inner disciples are able to easily reach the primordial spirit realm without cultivating just by awakening their bloodline. With that high of a starting point, it is truly a breeze for them to reach the leaving aperture realm or even higher. Against those monsters, there's no way ordinary cultivators like us stand a chance, Zhong Zhouxiao said with a bitter smile. The difference in talent from individual to individual sure was something frustrating and exasperating. Taking the otherworldly demonic tribe for example, every single one of them wielded the strength of a transcendent mortal from birth, and it was for this reason that mankind was at an inherently disadvantageous position against them. Most inner disciples of sage clans were able to advance to heights that most ordinary cultivators dared not dream of just on the basis of their pure bloodline. Against such monsters, ordinary cultivators like them had no choice but to admit defeat. Awakening their bloodline? Does the improvement induced by the awakening of their bloodline depend on the purity of their bloodline? That's right. In a sense, I guess you can say that this is similar to the case with saint beasts. The closer their bloodline to ancient beasts is, the greater the increment in their cultivation will be as a result of awakening their bloodline. It is on this foundation that the sage clans were able to remain the top powers on the master-teacher continent despite the passing of several dozen millenniums. Zhong Zhouxiao replied. Does that mean your bloodline isn't pure? To be honest with you, I can only be considered the side family of the side family, so there is no way the purity of my bloodline can be compared with that of the main family, Zhong Zhouxiao said awkwardly. If bloodline is that important, is there any way to purify one's bloodline or increase the tier of one's bloodline? Zhong Xian asked. Chapter 12 Tenji Tianxiong, Purify one's bloodline or increase the tier of one's bloodline? How can there be something as convenient as that in the world? Zhong Zhouxiao shook his head. The purity of the bloodline of a sage clan offspring is determined at birth. In fact, there are many inner disciples who had the purity of their bloodlines verified even before their birth. Similar to unique constitutions, this is something innate. There are no external forces that can possibly change one's constitution and bloodline easily. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian fell into deep thoughts. As he had never come into the contact with the sage clans before, he wasn't aware of many of their affairs. However, he did have two students with unique constitutions and one with a unique bloodline. Zhao Ya and Wei Ruyan possessed the pure yin body and the innate poison body and poison soul constitution respectively, and Yuan Dao possessed the emperor's bloodline. These weren't things which one could cultivate postnatally. Just like how a tadpole could never evolve into a divine dragon no matter how hard it trained, there were simply some things in the world that couldn't be achieved through hard work. Otherwise, he would have long given Zheng Yang, Liu Yang, and the others with unique constitutions as well so as to enhance their rate of growth. I see. It seems like I have been taking this matter too lightly. Zhong Xian shook his head. With the experience of cleansing the bloodline of spirit beasts to stimulate their growth, he thought that the sage clans might have some kind of means similar to that as well. However, it seemed like there was no way there could be something that convenient in the world. While the bloodline from sage clans enables one to cultivate swiftly in the initial phase, allowing one to easily reach heights that most ordinary cultivators would never be able to reach, it comes with some flaws as well. For one, the bloodline will also limit one's future potential, making it difficult for one to exceed the accomplishments of our ancestor. This is also the reason why most sage clans have focused on preserving their strength instead of pushing their way forward. It's simply too difficult to reach greater heights due to the limitations of the bloodline. Zhong Zhouxiao continued. There were always two sides to everything. Inheriting the bloodline of past sages would allow one to cultivate swiftly in the earlier stages, as if propelled by a rocket. However, as the individual had heavily relied on the inheritance of their ancestor to climb to their current height, it would also be extremely difficult for them to forge their own path forward beyond their ancestor. After asking for a while longer, Zhong Zhouxiao said everything that he was able to say. As for information that was confidential, his lips remained firmly sealed, refusing to speak a single word about it. Knowing that this was the rule within the Zhong clan, Zhong Xian also chose not to probe any further either and put Zhong Zhouxiao in a spot. While the other party had left out the most important information, Zhong Xian still managed to gather quite a few critical intelligence. For one, it seemed like there was indeed an engagement between the Zhong clan and the Luo clan, and just like what Musha had told him back then, the little prodigy of the Zhong clan was a very mysterious and elusive figure. Nearly everyone had heard of his name, but somehow, it was as if not a single person had caught a glimpse of his shadow. Nevertheless, based on Zhong Zhouxiao's deductions, while that little prodigy was only 20 this year, it was highly likely that his cultivation had already reached Saint 7 Dan. While Zhong Zhouxiao hadn't met the little prodigy, he did meet the other inner disciples of the Zhong clan before. One of them possessed an incredibly pure bloodline, and he was already at Saint 7 Dan before he reached 30. Considering how even he could reach such height, the little prodigy would surely be even more incredible than that. Saint 7 Dan. Zhong Xian couldn't help but feel deeply pressured. The elder of the Luo clan who had confronted him a few days back, Luo Chengxian, was at this cultivation realm as well. Even without using any battle technique, the other party was able to render him completely powerless with just a mere thought, leaving him unable to retaliate at all. The difference in their strength was as if the gap between the heavens and earth. Beyond primordial spirit realm, the increment in every cultivation stage will be extraordinarily difficult. If I want to marry Luo Ruoxin openly, I'll really have to try harder than that. Zhong Xian clenched his fists tightly. Beyond Saint 4 Dan, the advancement of every single cultivation stage demanded incredibly pure spiritual energy and superior talent. If he wanted to receive the Luo clan's approval, the least he could do was to attain strength that matched the Zhong clan's little prodigy. If he couldn't even defeat his love rival, how could he vie Luo Ruoxin from the other party's hands? I really have to start cultivating now. Feeling deeply pressured, Zhong Xian spent the next few days either cultivating or digesting the information in the books he had collected within his library of Heaven's Path. His efforts weren't wasted. Not only did he manage to further reinforce his cultivation, his comprehension of battle technique had also reached a new peak. He had spent the majority of his time studying the heavenly art of dimension unravel left behind by ancient sage Qiu Wu, and it had granted him a greater grasp over the laws of space. While he was only at embryonic soul realm, he was already able to execute the spatial seal which only leaving aperture realm cultivators were capable of pulling off. Once executed, he would able to leave everyone within a 5-meter radius around him feeling as if they were treading through a marsh, significantly reducing their strength and speed. Within this area, he was confident that he would be able to subdue even Hall Master Xing with a single finger, let alone Wu Shu and the others. However, this is mainly due to the superior strength of my origin soul and Zhanqi. Ultimately, my grasp over the laws of space is still a little too weak. However, I'm still some distance away from fully compiling the 2 Dan heavenly art of dimension unravel. Knowing that he still had much room for improvement, Zhong Xian didn't get conceited at his newfound strength. The heavenly art of dimension unravel could be divided into 5 dans. Even though he had managed to reach 1 Dan pinnacle, he was still a distance away from reaching 2 Dan. Time passed in a flash for cultivators. 6 days later, the aerial Saint Beast finally came to a halt above a massive city. Zhongsha, this is the Northern Meadows City, also known as the Ji City. It is one of the more prosperous and powerful cities within Qingyuan Empire. Wu Shu introduced. Gazing downward, Zhong Xian saw a massive city vaguely visible beyond the clouds. It was extremely large, making it impossible to overlook the entire city in a single sight. What was different about this city was the amazing number of high-rise buildings that they had, which reminded Zhongxian a little about the world he had been in previously. Just from a swift glance, it could be seen that it was indeed quite a prosperous city. Even if it was nowhere on par with Qingyuan City, it was far grander than Hongyuan City and the others. The marshlands of the Northern Meadows is an incredibly dangerous territory to venture into. Its sky is filled with exceptionally powerful turbulent air currents, making it impossible to enter it by flight. On the other hand, the ground was filled with all kinds of threats, ready to prey on the unknowing. As such, we need to find a guide familiar with the local terrain to bring us around. Otherwise, there's a good chance that we'll lose our life even before we manage to find the ghost cavern. Wu Shi said. I understand. Zhongxian nodded. Through reading books concerning the area, he had also gained some understanding of the marshlands of the Northern Meadows as well. Just like what Wu Shi said, it was an extremely treacherous terrain. Even primordial spirit realm experts had to venture through it on foot, or else they would risk being torn to shreds by the turbulent air currents. Without a guide to lead the way, they could very well fall into the traps that hunters had set up in the area, come under the encirclement of the regional saint beasts, or even step into a pit filled with lethal worm. Considering the superior fighting prowess of their expedition team, these naturally didn't pose much of a threat to them. However, it would still impede their advancement, and the longer they spent roaming in the marshlands, the more likely that Vicious would notice their presence. The head of the Northern Meadows City Master Teacher Pavilion, Ji Tianxiong, is my good friend. He's a trustworthy person, and I have just sent a message to him a while back. He should be arriving very soon. I intend to have him bring us through the marshlands so as to spare us some trouble. Wu Shi said. Ji Tianxiong. I have heard of him well. He has spent a period of time in our combat master hall, and his fighting prowess is really not bad. Division head Liao couldn't help but interject at this moment. Indeed. His freezing Zhunqi spared with his glacier finger is capable of turning water into ice in an instant, and this capability is exceptionally useful and practical on marsh terrains. With him leading the way, we should be able to overcome any danger easily. Wu Shi nodded, clearly deeply confident in his close friend. While they were speaking, the crowd suddenly saw an elder flying in their direction. Taking a close examination at the elder, Zhongxian noted that the other party had the appearance of one in his 50s, and he had a pair of incredibly sharp eyes that were filled with spirit and vigorous. At first impression, he seemed like an exceptionally keen individual. His cultivation realm was at primordial spirit realm pinnacle, and he exuded an aura reminiscent of a snowy mountain. It was very apparent that he cultivated an ice-type cultivation technique. Wu Shi quickly welcomed the elder before ushering him into the wooden hut. Everyone, this is the head of the Northern Meadows City Master Teacher Pavilion, Ji Tianxiong, Ji Shi. Ji Shi, this young man over here is Zhongxian, Zhong Shi, and this is Hall Master Xing of the Combat Master Hall. He swiftly introduced everyone to one another. Upon hearing Zhongxian's name, Ji Shi immediately bowed respectfully and said, Ji Tianxiong pays respect to Zhong Shi. Even though a distance of several million li sat between Qingyuan City and the Northern Meadows City, he had still heard news of Zhongxian's pavilion crashing. For an individual to successfully overcome an entire master-teacher pavilion, just this feat in itself made him a person worthy of respect. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Zhongxian replied with a smile. I believe Wu Shi should have told you the reason behind our visit here. Yes, Wu Shi has already told me everything. Ji Shi nodded. That's good. We intend to enter the depths of the marshlands to find the so-called ghost cavern, so we'll require Ji Shi's help in leading the way forward. Zhongxian said. Regarding that, the ghost cavern is actually a peculiar existence in the marshlands. It has no fixed location. There are some who follow the directions given by those who have found it in the past, only to see that it was no longer there. I can only fathom the rough area it would be, but as for whether we'll able to find it or not, I'm afraid that I can't guarantee that, Ji Shi said. While the ghost cavern was indeed in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, it seemed like it wasn't fixed to a location. Luck played a heavy role in determining whether one would be able to find it or not. I understand. You just have to bring us to the vicinity of where it usually appears. Zhong Jiuxiao, Zhong Shi, over here has entered the ghost cavern once, so he might be able to find some clues to track it down. Zhongxian replied with a smile. All right. Jisha agreed. The ghost cavern was a place which could temper one's mental resilience. Every year, there would be many master teachers who would drop by the marshlands to try their luck. Some of them did succeed, but there were also those who vanished without a trace as well. The previous time Zhong Jiuxiao had been in the marshlands, he had a guide to bring him around as well. The marshlands were rather similar to a desert, changing greatly with time. Even if one had visited the marshlands in the past, it would still be wiser to hire a guide to bring one around, or else one could very well end up losing his way. You have already flown for many days now. Do you want to take a brief rest at our master teacher pavilion first? Jisha offered. There's no need for that. We'll head over right now, or else more master teachers could possibly lose their lives. Zhongxian waved his hand to turn down the other party's kind gesture. An additional day delayed for them meant an additional day for Vicious to strike. Considering that the lives of master teachers were on the line, they couldn't afford the luxury of time. In any case, as cultivators, they could recover their fatigue through cultivation, so they weren't in dire need for rest either. Very well, let's set off now then. Jisha nodded in agreement. He swiftly pointed out a direction for the aerial Saint Beast, and it began making its way over to the marshlands. The marshlands were located further up north of the northern Meadows city. After roughly 2 hours of flight, the group was welcomed with the sight of a pitch-black marshlands that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon, creating an illusion that it was connected with the sky. Let's alight here. The air currents ahead will be turbulent, and there are many dangerous fields in the sky as well. It would be a disaster if we were to accidentally drop into one of them, so there's no choice but to proceed ahead on foot. Jisha explained as he instructed the aerial Saint Beast to land on the ground. The danger of the marshlands of the northern meadows lay not only on the ground but in the air as well. There were many peculiar fields in the air that one could potentially collide with when traveling above ground. The slightest carelessness could cause one to be devoured by it, placing one in great peril. After alighting from the back of the aerial Saint Beasts, the group swiftly assessed the pitch-black marshlands right before them. To be exact, the marshlands wasn't completely pitch-black. It was actually filled with scarlet flowers that rose above the marsh, reminiscent of lotus. The locals call those flowers man-eating lotuses. Don't underestimate them just because of their beautiful exterior, they are actually extremely dangerous plants. Most transcendent mortal cultivators would be unable to escape from their clutches once caught. Jisha explained as he threw a stone toward a nearby lotus. Voila! As soon as the rock came into contact with the lotus, the latter immediately wrapped itself around the rock, reducing it to dust in an instant, as if some kind of unique power had devoured it. This. Zhongxian's eyelids shot up in astonishment. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never believe that there would be such a plant in the world. Chapter 12:11 Hall Master Xing's Leaving Aperture Ordeal. The man-eating lotus had devoured the energy swiftly, precisely, and accurately. Just like what Jisha had said, it was indeed unlikely for ordinary transcendent mortal cultivators to be able to escape from their clutches. Other than the man-eating lotuses, there are also some unique poisonous worms that live within the marsh. Once bitten, one's body will immediately be numbed, making it impossible for one to exert any strength. Unable to move, one will only continue to sink deeper and deeper into the marshlands, until one is reduced to white bones. There was even a year where 100,000 cultivators and master teachers had died here. As such, this area has been labeled as a forbidden zone for cultivators. As Jisha spoke, he took out a slice of cooked meat from his storage ring and tossed it into the marsh. Initially, the cooked meat floated on top of the marsh. A moment later, a couple of black beetles suddenly dived out of the marsh and bit the meat. In the blink of an eye, the meat was reduced to a puddle of acid, as if it had been corroded by a very potent acid. Upon seeing this sight, the faces of the group turned extremely awful. They had heard rumors about how treacherous the marshlands was, but they hadn't thought that it would actually be so fearsome. Even as primordial spirit realm cultivators, they still couldn't help but feel their bodies turning cold in apprehension. However, there's no need to worry. As treacherous as the marshlands are, there is a way to pass through it safely. There are some plots of land that float above the marsh, and they form something similar to a suspension bridge. As long as we are able to find these plots of land, we will be able to pass through the marshlands without much trouble, Jisha said with a smile. After saying those words, he leaped 10 meters forward and stepped on solid ground on the marshlands. Everyone, follow me closely. Make sure not to step wrongly or lag behind. Following which, he continued to leap forward. In just a dozen steps, he had already covered a distance of several hundred meters. Zhongxian examined the area where Jisha had landed carefully, and while it was nearly indiscernible, there was indeed a slight difference in the color as compared to the rest of the marsh. It was slightly tinged green, and while there were no plants growing in the area, it gave a feeling of fertility, different from the desolate aura that the rest of the marsh was emanating. It doesn't seem likely for these plots of land to have been formed naturally. Most likely, they have been artificially constructed. Zhongxian had no reason how the marshland came to be, but its formation should have resulted in the ground in the area to sink as a whole. For their plots of land where one could stand on to surface from the marsh, the chances were that they were man-made. Let's move on. Deciding not to think too deep into the matter, the group had the aerial Saint Beast to wait for them on the spot while they leaped onto the plots of land as well, following closely behind Jisha. As Saint Realm experts, their memory far surpassed ordinary humans. Even though they had only briefly seen Jisha's movements, they were still able to memorize his movements clearly and emulate them without any problem. Jisha, I heard that there are some native saint beasts that live within the marsh. I am curious to know how do they survive in such an environment. Considering how poor the environment was, it was truly difficult to comprehend how any saint beasts could possibly grow in the marsh. Nearer to the center of the marsh, there will be some islands, the largest of them being roughly several kilometers in diameter, which would produce unique saint herbs and ores due to the unique environment of the marsh. As such, there are quite a few saint beasts who would claim those territories for their own in order to dominate those resources. Often, there are some cultivators who unwittingly enter those areas, only to end up killed. At which, Jisha suddenly gestured forward and said, "Speak of the devil. There's one of those right in front of us." The crowd turned over, and as expected, they saw a significantly larger plot of land right in front of them. Lush with greenery, it resembled a remote island in the midst of an ocean. It was filled with all kinds of plants, and from time to time, they would even see some birds flying in the area. Proceeding forward, they finally arrived on the island after a 10-minute journey. The island was roughly 500 meters in radius, and there was a small hill in the middle of it. It floated above the marsh as if an upside-down tortoise shell. We should hurry forward. It'll be best if we could reach the center of the marsh before night time. The marsh gets even more frightening at night. Seeing that the crowd's attention was wandering around the island, Jisha urged anxiously. Yuan taking a glance at the gradually falling sun, Zhongxian nodded in agreement. Let's proceed forward. While there was still some time before sunset, the marshlands were simply too huge, and they couldn't fly in the area either. Even if they were to rush at full speed ahead, it would probably take them 2 to 4 hours before reaching the middle of the marsh, so they couldn't afford to waste any time. With Jisha's deep understanding of the marsh, the group managed to avoid most of the pitfalls along the way. They managed to successfully circumvent the territories of the saint beasts, as well as some of the more treacherous terrain in the marsh, thus saving much time. 4 hours later, they were finally nearing the center of the marshlands. On the way forward, they encountered quite a few cultivators, but the latter chose to take a detour around them. While the group didn't don on their master-teacher robe in order to conceal their identities, the incredible fighting prowess of the group was more than sufficient to strike fear in the hearts of others. Unlike in the city, where the presence of the master-teacher pavilion would make others think twice before carrying out any malicious acts, those in the marshlands had no qualms with killing other cultivators to steal their items. In fact, such actions were commonplace here. Furthermore, if the corpses were to be disposed into the marshlands, it would be difficult for the regional master-teacher pavilion to investigate the matter and make an accurate judgment. As such, it was considered as a lawless zone, and in such an area, it went without saying that strength reigned supreme. After proceeding forward another hour, just when the sun was starting to disappear at the western horizon, Jisha lifted his finger and pointed. The island just ahead of us is the very center of the entire marshlands. Based on most of the rumors, the ghost cavern tend to appear there the most often, so it'll be good to start out search there before gradually spreading out. Other than that, I don't really have a better idea in mind. Following his finger, the crowd saw a massive island of roughly 8 kilometers in diameter. The land was extremely lush, filled with greenery of all sorts, and there was a towering mountain in the middle of the island. Looking at it from afar, it seemed like a small city. Let's head over. Before long, the crowd stepped onto the island. The first thing that they noticed about the island was the astonishingly high concentration of spiritual energy in the area. It felt refreshing and energizing to be in an environment so rich in spiritual energy. No wonder why saint beasts would want to live here. Indeed, if one were to cultivate here, one could probably achieve twice as much with the same amount of effort. Zhong Xian noted. It seemed like the island was a natural blessed land for cultivation. Those who cultivate for the long term here would be able to easily surpass those who lived outside. As the saying goes, opportunities go hand in hand with risk. Despite knowing the dangers lurking within the marsh, the saint beasts still determinedly chose to reside in the area in hopes that they would be able to attain greater strength. All right, we'll be resting here tonight. It'll be best for us to only start our search for the ghost cavern tomorrow morning, as venomous worms and the sort will emerge from the marsh at night. Being too hasty in the moment will only slow us down. As Jisha spoke, he flicked his wrist and took out a gourd of high-tier saint beast urine before pouring them in the surroundings. This served as a deter venomous worms and the sort from coming around them. Having seen many things on their journey here, the remaining members of the group had also seen how terrifying the marsh was with their own eyes. Not saying anything much, they took out the rations they had prepared beforehand and began eating. Fine wine accompanied with roasted meat, it could be said to be a considerably bountiful dinner. After eating, Zhong Xian didn't go to rest. Instead, he crossed his legs and continued to cultivate. He drove his Heaven's Path Zhenqi through his body to temper his embryonic soul again and again, trying to push for a metamorphosis as soon as possible. While Zhong Xian was at the Combat Master Hall, he had collected all of the books in the Guardian Division to form another Heaven's Path Golden Body, and its effects weren't too bad. Even if his physical body wasn't on par with the Golden Origin Cauldron yet, it definitely didn't pale too much from the latter. Chem. After cultivating for some time, Zhong Xian suddenly felt a surge of energy pulsating not too far away. Turning his head over, he saw Hall Master Xing's face abruptly reddening, as if he was unable to suppress the energy rampaging within his body. What's wrong? Alarmed, Zhong Xian quickly walked over and asked. The others were also jolted awake from their cultivation, and they quickly walked over to check on Hall Master Xing out of worry. Principal Zhong, I think that my leaving Aperture ordeal might be coming very soon. Hall Master Xing replied with a pale face. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian frowned. After he had repaired the large rift in Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit, the latter swiftly made a breakthrough from half-leaving Aperture realm to quasi-leaving Aperture realm. Under normal circumstances, he should be able to determine when he wanted to summon the leaving Aperture ordeal whenever he wanted, so why would it suddenly trigger at this moment? What happened? Knowing that there was something doubtful about the situation, Zhong Xian asked. I'm not too sure either. I was cultivating for a while earlier when I suddenly felt energy overflowing from my primordial spirit, attempting to overcome my bottleneck. I tried suppressing it, but I couldn't hold it in. At this moment, Hall Master Xing's Zhenqi suddenly burst out from his pores, and soon after, ominous clouds began gathering above everyone's head. The lightning ordeal was about to fall. Don't worry, it's just the leaving Aperture ordeal. With your strength, you'll surely be able to overcome it easily. Gesturing for everyone else to evacuate from the area where the lightning ordeal would fall, Zhong Xian encouraged with a smile. As the head of the Combat Master Hall, Hall Master Xing's physical resilience far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. It was only because Qingyuan City had been in turmoil for the past few days that he chose to keep putting off his leaving Aperture ordeal, especially given the fact that it would take some time for him to recover from the overwhelming damage sustained from the lightning ordeal. Otherwise, he shouldn't have any trouble clearing the lightning ordeal. Boom! While Zhongxian was speaking, a streak of lightning suddenly fell from the sky. Hula! Hall Master Xing drew out his primordial spirit and dove it straight toward the lightning. Tzzzzzzzz. As soon as his primordial spirit collided with the lightning, it immediately began shrinking as if cotton in the face of fire. A deep roar resounded deafeningly in the air, reflecting the immense pain that Hall Master Xing was going through. What? Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up in alarm. The leaving aperture ordeal is incredibly dangerous. Shouldn't he keep his primordial spirit within his body so as to share the burden of the lightning ordeal with it? Why did he draw his primordial spirit out to meet it face-on? That's too reckless, too dangerous. Wu Shi exclaimed in horror. The lightning of the leaving aperture ordeal could temper one's primordial spirit, but the devastating might of it was not one which any primordial spirit could withstand by itself. As such, most cultivators would choose to use their physical body to ward off most of the lightning, absorbing only a small portion of it into their primordial spirit. And yet, Hall Master Xing actually sent his primordial spirit straight into the lightning. That was practically no different from suicide. No, something is wrong. It doesn't seem like he's doing it voluntarily. Activating his eye of insight, Zhongxian's face darkened. He isn't doing it voluntarily? You mean that he's under control? The crowd couldn't really comprehend what Zhongxian meant. It seems like a soul oracle has made a move on him. Knowing that he's on a verge of a breakthrough, the soul oracle forcefully manipulated his primordial spirit while he was cultivating to draw down the lightning ordeal before dragging his primordial spirit out, wanting to use the power of lightning to eradicate first. Or perhaps, he intends to make use of this incident to wear us down while attempting to save him. Zhongxian's eyes narrowed in fury. Soul oracle? Does that mean that we have been noticed? Wu Shi's face darkened. They had swapped out of their master-teacher robe and rushed here without any worry in order to get to the mastermind behind the Qingtian Emperor before the other party could get to them. Yet, who could have known that the other party would still be the one to make the preemptive blow? That seems to be the case. Zhongxian nodded. Turning his gaze back to the sky, he saw Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit gradually growing smaller and smaller under the devastating might of the lightning, seemingly about to dissipate at any time soon. As powerful as Hall Master Xing was, given that primordial spirits were innately weak against the power of lightning, and he wasn't fully prepared to face the leaving aperture ordeal when it descended, the odds were extremely against his favor. At this rate, Hall Master Xing really might just die. Division Head Wei and Division Head Liao watched the situation in anxiety, not knowing what they could do. Hall Master Xing was not only their leader but an old friend whom they had known for several centuries now. They couldn't bear to watch their old friend being burned to crisp with their own eyes. Principal Zhong, do you have a way to save him? The duo hurriedly turned to Zhongxian desperately, hoping that he would have a way to resolve the situation. If there was anyone here who could possibly save Hall Master Xing, it could only be the young man before them. Rest assured, I'll surely save him. Even if the duo didn't say anything, Zhongxian would still save Hall Master Xing. With a sharp glint in his eyes, he examined the lightning ordeal before him closely with his eye of insight. Chapter 12:12 The emergence of the ghost cavern. Through his eye of insight, he could see the power of lightning swiftly grinding down Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit, swiftly pushing it toward dissipation. At this rate, Hall Master Xing didn't have much time left. There are many cultivators who have reached quasi-leaving aperture realm, but out of fear for the power of lightning, they dare not to summon their leaving aperture ordeal down. Pavilion Master Go is one such person. Going by this logic, it should be impossible for the leaving aperture ordeal to fall on its own accord. It's likely that someone has interfered with Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit, thus giving rise to the current situation. Zhongxian analyzed with a tight knit between his brows. There's no way to forcefully stop a lightning ordeal once it has started. Any attempt to interfere with the leaving aperture ordeal will only make it grow stronger, thus putting the cultivator facing it in greater peril. Ji Shi remarked as he shook his head helplessly. As a primordial spirit realm pinnacle expert, he had read many books regarding the leaving aperture ordeal, so he knew quite a bit about it as well. This was the trial that the world put those who attempted to vie power from it through, and those who dared to cheat in the trial would have to face a greater lashback from the heavens. Indeed, this is really a dilemma. Zhongxian nodded grimly. What was truly fearsome about the lightning ordeal was that no one would be able to interfere with it started, or else it would only grow stronger and stronger before eventually reaching an uncontrollable level. Take his Saint Ascension ordeal for example. Despite seeing how much danger he was in, Luo Ruoxin still held herself back from interfering, knowing that any attempt to do so would only put him in greater danger. Otherwise, Zhongxian would at least have dozens of methods to eradicate the lightning ordeal. If we don't do anything soon, Hall Master Xing really will lose his life, Division Head Liao urged anxiously. I know. Zhongxian replied impatiently as he muttered flaws in his mind, and a book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. He swiftly flipped it open to take a look. A moment later, he turned to Wu Shi and said, "You are the only one who can save Hall Master Xing now." Me? Wu Shi was taken aback. Is there anyone who has any spirit-reinforcing pill here? Paying no heed to Wu Shi's bewilderment, Zhongxian turned to the crowd and asked. I have one here. Division Head Liao rushed up and passed a jade bottle into Zhongxian's hand. Zhongxian immediately took out the pill from the bottle before placing it into Wu Shi's hands. Swallow it. Wu Shi looked at the pill in his hand hesitantly. The spirit-reinforcing pill was a grade 7 pill that harnessed an immense amount of spiritual energy. Even as a half-leaving aperture realm cultivator, if he were to consume it recklessly, there was good chance that he would be unable to control the massive accumulation of energy within his body and explode on the spot. I don't have any time to explain. Just believe me and do it. Zhongxian's face darkened further upon seeing Wu Shi's hesitation. Yes. Knowing that the young man before him wielded capabilities exceeding that of ordinary humans, Wu Shi dared not to utter any nonsense. He quickly placed the pill into his mouth and swallowed it. A moment later, he felt a furious surge of energy rampaging angrily within his body, threatening to burst his meridians apart. There are a few flaws in your cultivation technique. Once you correct them, you will be able to achieve a breakthrough on the spot. Zhongxian's voice began sounding melodiously in the air. Before Wu Shi could even process what was going on, he realized that the zhenqi in his body had already begun to move in accordance with the words spoken by the young man before him. This is impartation of heaven's will? Is Zhongxi intending to resolve my flaws and have me achieve a breakthrough to leaving aperture realm on the spot? Zhongxian narrowed his eyes in astonishment. Instructing him to swallow the spirit-reinforcing pill and resolving the flaws concerning his primordial spirit. No matter how slow he would have to be a fool to still not understand what was going on. Within moments, the zhenqi in his body had already fused together with the spiritual energy in the spirit-reinforcing pill, swiftly accumulating more and more. Boom! In less than 3 minutes, he broke through the bottleneck of his body, and primordial spirit which shared the same appearance as him emerged from his glabella. Go over. Zhongxian instructed as he gave Wu Shi's primordial spirit a push on the back. Before Wu Shi could even process what had just happened, his primordial spirit was already fast on its way toward the Hall Master Xing's lightning ordeal. Watching as the fearsome streak of lightning swiftly enlarged before his eyes, Wu Shi nearly fainted on the spot. He had only achieved a breakthrough to leaving aperture realm, and he hadn't even had time to reinforce his cultivation when he was suddenly forcefully pushed toward the lightning ordeal. Could it be that Zhongxi thought that it would be a pity for Hall Master Xing to depart alone, so he wanted to send him down as a companion for Hall Master Xing to walk the final journey with him? Quick! Push Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit back into his body. Seeing that Wu Shi was still dazing off in midair, Zhongxian bellowed anxiously. Push his primordial spirit back. Wu Shi was stunned for a moment before realizing that even though he had stepped into the area of the lightning ordeal, he wasn't affected by the power of lightning. Heaving a sigh of relief, he hurriedly grabbed forward to push Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit down. Voila! Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit flew straight back into his body. Nourished by his body, Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit finally stabilized from its previous injured condition. As powerful as the lightning ordeal was, it wasn't sufficient to phase Hall Master Xing's incredibly resilient body in the short run. What's going on? Isn't interfering with the lightning ordeal of another a huge taboo? How could they still be fine? Taking the scene into sight, the crowd was utterly dumbstruck by what they were seeing. Under normal circumstances, the leaving aperture ordeal would have surely intensified as soon as one stepped into the perimeter of the lightning ordeal. So, how could nothing happen when Wu Shi's primordial spirit headed over to save Hall Master Xing? Who says that they are fine? Speak of the devil, here it comes. Zhong Xian shook his head grimly. Hurriedly turning their gazes over, the crowd saw the swiftly dissipating ominous clouds in the air suddenly gathering together once more. Wu Shi has barely reached quasi-leaving aperture realm, and as one who has to face a lightning ordeal himself, the lightning ordeal of others is unable to faze him. It's through making use of this loophole that he was able to save Hall Master Xing successfully. However, this maneuver on his part brought him to the lightning ordeal's notice, so his leaving aperture ordeal would be falling very soon as well. Zhong Xian explained. He has to face a leaving aperture ordeal too? The crowd nearly fainted on the spot. What is the point of this then? To put another in danger in the midst of saving one, aren't we returning back to the square one in the end? Wu Shi, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and return to your body. Oblivious to the shock of those around him, Zhong Xian bellowed. Yes. Realizing that he had been noticed by the lightning ordeal as well, Wu Shi's body trembled in fear. He quickly turned around and retreated back into his body. Zhong Shi, what should I do next? Wu Shi asked Zhong Xian with his face pale in fright. These lightning clouds have gathered together in a rush after abruptly sensing your aura, so it wouldn't be too strong. Furthermore, most of the power of lightning has already been absorbed by Hall Master Xing, so as long as you don't face the lightning ordeal with your primordial spirit straight, you should be able to withstand it. Zhong Xian said. Even though Wu Shi had only just made a breakthrough, considering how his body had just been nourished by the spirit-reinforcing pill, and the flaws in his primordial spirit had just been resolved, he should still be able to withstand the weakened lightning ordeal. Most of the power of lightning has been absorbed by Hall Master Xing. That's good. Hearing that, Wu Shi heaved a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, his relief didn't last for too long. A moment later, a flash of lightning descended on Wu Shi. Voila! Every single strand of hair on Wu Shi's head immediately leaped up from the static lightning, as if alarmed by the might of the lightning. The astounding might of the lightning bolt nearly caused his primordial spirit to dissipate on the spot. You call this wouldn't be too strong? Why do I feel like it has gotten much stronger than before? Wu Shi roared in frenzy. You told me that most of the power of lightning has already been absorbed by Hall Master Xing. How could the lightning bolt still be so powerful then? In the midst of his frenzy, Wu Shi heard the voice of a certain young man sounding sheepish not too far away. Oh. My mistake. Calculation error. It seems like your involvement in Hall Master Xing's leaving aperture ordeal has caused your own leaving aperture ordeal to intensify instead. However, there's still no need for you to panic. Yuan, no need to panic at all. I have complete trust in your strength. You can do it. Fighting. Wu Shi. To think that the young man before him would be such an unreliable person. Damn it. How can you make me take such risk before confirming the matter? This is too much. While Wu Shi was filled with grudges against Zhong Xian, the power of lightning swiftly accumulated in his body, leaving him with no spare attention to think about anything else anymore. He quickly concentrated his mind into dealing with the power of lightning coursing through his body. Voila! But despite his efforts, the might of the lightning coursing through his body was simply too destructive. In just a moment, his primordial spirit had already been ravaged to the point of near dissipation. At the same time, countless charred marks appeared throughout his body, and blood wouldn't stop flowing down the edges of his lips. It felt as if he would cave in at any moment and die. It's over. Wu Shi's face turned livid with despair. He had just achieved a breakthrough, and he hadn't even reinforced his cultivation yet. There was no way he could face a powered-up leaving aperture ordeal in his current state. TZZZZZZZZ. Just when he thought that it was the end, he suddenly felt a surge of zhenqi hidden in the depths of his body suddenly surging forth, repairing his injuries at a visible rate. This surge of zhenqi seemed to carry the authority of the heavens, and it was incredibly pure as well. It could even repair the damages on his primordial spirit with ease. This. Did Zhongsha leave this surge of zhenqi within my body? Wu Shi widened his eyes in astonishment. He had verified with his own eyes Zhongshen's identity as a celestial master teacher. Considering the mystical effects of the zhenqi, there was little doubt that it was the latter who left it in his body. This would explain why the young man would instruct him to save Hall Master Xing without any hesitation. It seemed like he had prepared a hand in case something awry were to occur. Who? In the blink of an eye, his primordial spirit and physical body had already recovered back to its peak. However, the power of lightning coursing through his body was far from dying down yet. Injury, recovery, injury, recovery. It was just a short 10 minutes, but Wu Shi felt as if he had been to and fro the gates of hell several times within this short span of time. Nevertheless, he had finally successfully cleared the leaving aperture ordeal. Opening his eyes once more, he saw that Hall Master Xing's lightning ordeal had also passed, and the ominous clouds had scattered, revealing a clear night sky once more. Even though Hall Master Xing had started the leaving aperture realm on a shaky note, he was ultimately still the head of the Combat Master Hall, possessing capabilities far surpassing ordinary cultivators. While he had nearly died on several occasions, he managed to successfully withstand it with gritted teeth. Principal Zhong, thank you. Wu Shi quickly walked up to Zhongxian and clasped his fist. If not for the zhenqi the young man had left in his body, he would have indubitably succumbed to the lightning ordeal and lost his life. While the process was extraordinarily excruciating, he still managed to leap 2 cultivation stages within a very short period of time, jumping from half-leaving aperture realm to leaving aperture realm primary stage. In such a sense, the pain that he had been put through was worthwhile. At this moment, however, he suddenly heard Zhongsha's telepathic voice sounding by his ears, "Don't speak anymore and feign a state of severe injury." Wu Shi had no idea why Zhongxian would abruptly make such an instruction, but he knew that the latter would have his own reason for doing so. Thus, his body suddenly wobbled weakly before collapsing powerlessly to the ground, as if he had been sapped of all of his strength. Wu Shi. Alarmed, Zhong Zhouxiao rushed over. With Zhong Zhouxiao's support, Wu Shi was barely able to get back onto his feet. Just as Wu Shi was about to ask what Zhongxian was up to, the latter suddenly shouted loudly into the surroundings. "It seems you have already known that we would come. Since that's the case, why don't you show yourself straight? I know that you want to kill me, and you know that I want to kill you as well. There's no point wasting time playing hide and seek, don't you think so?" Hide and seek? What's that? More importantly, who is Principal talking to? Wu Shi was taken aback. Wu Shi wasn't the only one who was surprised by Zhongxian's abrupt actions. The remaining members of the group were perplexed as well. They had swiftly scouted the island and scanned the area with their spiritual perception earlier and confirmed that there was no one in the area other than them. If there was truly someone in the area, there was no way that person could have managed to bypass the detection of their spiritual perception. While the uncomprehending crowd was just about to ask about the matter, an eerie voice suddenly echoed in the air, "He he he," as expected of Zhongsha. Formidable indeed, noticing my presence right after I played a small trick. Following which, another island slowly surfaced from the depths of the marsh. That is the ghost cavern," Zhong Zhouxiao exclaimed with clenched fists. Chapter 12-13 Encountering Inner Demons once more. This is. Wu Shi quickly turned to the island. Despite being the vice-head of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, this was the first time he had seen the rumored ghost cavern. It was a small island, roughly 3 kilometers in diameter. At the very center was a lake shaped like an eye, and it was impossible to see how deep it was just by looking at its surface. Bizarrely shaped stones were scattered throughout the island. Even though the island had surfaced from the marsh, it was as if some kind of mysterious power was shrouding it, preventing the slightest hint of mud from being visible on the ground. On the contrary, there was low-lying lush greenery to be seen all around. The eerie voice sounded once more. "If you wish to kill me, come over. I'll be hiding somewhere within. You can slowly take your time to find me. I'm in no hurry at all." Following which, a layer of mist seemed to suddenly drift into existence around the island, gradually shrouding it from view. It was as if the island would sink back into the marsh very soon. "Let's head over," Zhongxian said as he began to make his way over. However, before he could get to the other island, Division Head Liao abruptly stepped in his path to halt him. "We can't go. It's obvious that the enemy has come prepared. We were nearly done in even before we could enter the ghost cavern. If we really enter the ghost cavern, there will surely be plenty of traps that will come our way." Even someone of Hall Master Xing's strength had nearly been eradicated by the lightning ordeal due to the other party's schemes. If they stepped onto the island, there was no doubt that they would face countless traps, and chances were that one of the traps would claim their lives. Zhongxian shook his head and said, "He already knows that we are going after him. If we don't enter the ghost cavern now, he will only have more time to prepare, and that will put us in greater danger in the future." From the looks of it, it was apparent that Vicious had anticipated their arrival and made preparations beforehand. As such, there was no point delaying the matter any longer. It would not make a difference either way. In fact, the more time they wasted, the more time Vicious would have to kill more master teachers. Since that was the case, it would be simpler if they barged in and got it over with. Otherwise, once the ghost cavern descended into the marsh once more, they would not be able to do anything about Vicious anymore. But Zhongxian was still shaking his head as he interjected, "If we do not enter the ghost cavern now, the enemy will just continue his attack. Rather than allow more innocent lives to be lost, we might as well head in to see what he's up to. Besides, if he really wanted to make a move against us, at least half of our group would have been dead by now." The enemy they were facing was Vicious, the legendary expert who had clashed directly with Kong Shi back then. Furthermore, it was apparent that the memory of the Vicious in the ghost cavern had recovered to a greater degree compared to the Vicious in his Book of Heaven's Path. Even though Zhongxian was able to withstand the other Vicious soul arts, it was hard to say the same about the 3 primordial spirit realm pinnacle elders from the Master Teacher Pavilion. In fact, it was also doubtful whether Division Head Wei and Division Head Liao would be able to withstand Vicious soul arts or not. Vicious inviting them into his lair instead of assaulting them head-on meant that he had some schemes in mind, and as risky as it might have been, this could have been their only opportunity to find out what Vicious was up to and bring him down. Seeing Zhongxian insisting on the matter, Division Head Liao was a little conflicted. At this moment, he suddenly felt something hard in his hands. It was a wine gourd. At the same time, he heard a telepathic voice in his ears. "Give Hall Master Xing this wine." "You want Hall Master Xing to drink wine?" Division Head Liao was taken aback. Hall Master Xing had just been through the lightning ordeal, and there was not the slightest patch of charred skin on his body. In such circumstances, he should be fed with pills in order to hasten his recovery, and yet, wine? Division Head Liao stared at the wine in his hands in a dilemma. At that moment, the feeble Wu Shi suddenly walked over and bellowed deeply, "Hurry up and go." "Yes." Hearing Wu Shi agree with Zhongxian, Division Head Liao swiftly got to action. He pried open Hall Master Xing's mouth and poured the fine wine in. A moment later, Hall Master Xing finally opened his eyes. Even though spirit had finally returned to his eyes, his movements were still dull with lethargy, similar to Wu Shi. "Since Principal Zhong has already said so, let's head in together. We have come as a group, so we should advance as one too," Hall Master Xing said. With Division Head Wei's support, he struggled to his feet before wobbling his way over to Zhongxian. Zhongxian shot him a faint smile before leaping over to the other island, and the others quickly followed suit. The little island was deathly silent, to the point where they could vaguely hear a deafening ring in their ears. It was as if there was some kind of formation that isolated them from the rest of the world. Wu Shi and the others quickly scanned their surroundings as grimness seeped into their eyes. It seems like a grade 8 formation. Even though the island was completely sealed, they found that they were unable to tell exactly what was wrong with it. Without a doubt, the formation cast over the island was one that was on par with those they had encountered back at the Qiuwu Palace. A grade 8 formation. Even though 2 members of their groups had just achieved a breakthrough to the leaving aperture realm, they were still far from matching a formation of that caliber. Zhongxian nodded as well. While he did not think that it would be easy for Vicious to kill them, given that they were already standing in the other party's territory, it would be unwise for them to let their guard down. Vicious was an existence who had trapped even Kongsha back in his prime, so the means he had up his sleeve were bound to be frightening. Zhongxian activated his eye of insight and began assessing the island silently. There was indeed a formation cast around the island, but it was not one intended for offense. Instead, its purpose was to float and conceal the island. It seems like this land didn't float out of the marsh after all. Instead, it operates like a boat. Using the power of the formation, it floats above the marsh and roams around the area freely, appearing only before others when it wants to, Zhongxian thought. Vicious needs to devour master teachers in order to regain his strength, so he intentionally spread the news regarding the abilities of the ghost cavern to draw cultivators and master teachers into the marshlands. Considering the treacherous terrain of the marshlands, the high death toll in the region has not drawn the suspicion of others, and all he had to do was let off a few cultivators from time to time in order to further the legend. Slowly, a complete picture formed in Zhongxian's mind. Previously, he had heard that the ghost cavern could temper one's mental resilience, and countless master teachers and cultivators came to the marshlands in the hope of a chance encounter with it. However, from the looks of it, it seemed like most of those who managed to find the ghost cavern end up becoming vicious nourishment. On the other hand, the few successful cases who had their mental resilience significantly boosted would become living advertisements for the ghost cavern, drawing in a steady supply of cultivators and master teachers for him. Birds die for food, humans die for wealth. Greed was an innate nature for all living beings, and master teachers were no exception to the rule. As expected of an old monster who has lived for countless years, his means are far more formidable than that finger. The finger vicious that Zhongxian had subdued in the cloud mist ridge had subordinated the spirit beasts and saint beasts in the area to provide him with the nourishment required for his recovery. While he had managed to devour a substantial number of master teachers over the years, the numbers could not begin to compare with this one. Let me see what is within the lake that has driven so many master teachers into a frenzy to find it. Zhongxian shook his head as he began making his way over to the lake. Zhongshe, be careful. Seeing Zhongxian walk toward the lake, Zhong Jiuxiao hurried over to advise him. The lake reflects a person's inner desires and magnifies them. It'll be difficult to escape from it once you are caught. He had cultivated here for a month, so he was extremely familiar with the nature of the lake. It reflected one's inner desires, and the longer one stared into, the more unbearable the desire became. Considering that their enemy they were dealing with was a soul oracle, if the other party used the opportunity to fuel those inner desires and warp them into inner demons, they could very well be done for. Or perhaps, the other party might even have lured them onto this land with that very intention in mind. It's fine. I'm interested to see what my inner desires will show, Zhongxian replied with a casual smile. He had also guessed as much. However, if they hesitated in the face of all possible danger, they would never be able to get anything done. Zhongshe. Seeing that Zhongxian would not heed his advice, Zhong Jiuxiao hurriedly turned his gaze to Wu Shi, intending to get the latter to talk Zhongxian out of his foolishness. But when he saw the latter crouching weakly with a pained expression on his face, the words he wanted to say suddenly caught in his mouth. It seemed like the injuries the latter had sustained from the leaving aperture ordeal earlier were simply too severe, such that even speaking was difficult for him. He then turned his attention to Hall Master Xing, only to see him in an equally bad state. His eyelids were drooping down, and it seemed like he would fall into a deep sleep if not for his sheer willpower pushing him on. All right, you should all wait there for me. It'll suffice for me to head there alone. If I face any danger, you can come and rescue me instantly, Zhongxian instructed before walking over to the lake alone. The water in the lake was incredibly clear, and the starlight reflecting off its surface seemed to be reflecting the thoughts within one's mind. Looking deeper into it, Zhongxian could see faint images within it, as if recollections of his own memory. Soon after, his consciousness was drawn out of his body, and he suddenly found himself plunged into pure darkness. It was similar to what he encountered during the heart ordeal back at the Qiuwu Palace. A sealed room with no light and no sound, so stifling that it could drive one mad. Some time later, a pitch-black figure slowly emerged from the darkness, speaking in a mesmerizing, familiar voice. Zhongxian, it's me. The figure slowly approached, revealing an unbelievably beautiful face, one that belonged to the person of his dreams, Luo Ruoxin. She looked over quietly with nothing but a faint smile on her face, a look that Zhongxian had imagined countless times. Seeing Luo Ruoxin's face, Zhongxian could not help but nod in satisfaction. Finally, something more creative than the others. The inner demons that he had met previously were all incredibly revolting, to the point that his stomach would churn just by looking at their exterior. At the very least, the inner demons here seemed to at least have some wits, knowing to morph themselves into Luo Ruoxin's appearance based on his memory. It seems like Vicious has also played a part in this, eh? Zhongxian thought with an unreadable smile on his lips. The lake could see through one's inner desires, allowing one to know that they craved for the most, and Zhongxian's greatest inner desire was Luo Ruoxin. But before he could even get to see his own inner desire reflected in the lake, an inner demon with Luo Ruoxin's form had already appeared before him. It was apparent that Vicious had meddled somehow. If anyone else were to see the lover whom he had dreamed day and night for appearing before his eyes, he might very well have lost all self-control and immersed himself in the other party's comforting embrace. However, Zhongxian was different. Putting aside that he possessed both the Library of Heaven's Path and the Eye of Insight, which allowed them to peer through the nature of things, just the 4 Celestial Master-Teacher acknowledgements and the Saint Ascension ordeal that he had undergone were more than enough to allow him to remain perfectly rational before such a situation. Zhongxian. Luo Ruoxin called as she slowly walked over to Zhongxian. The affection reflected in her black eyes felt so tender that one could just melt in it. "You're here." Upon seeing Luo Ruoxin, Zhongxian muttered with a dazed look in his eyes. He quickly rushed forward to hold the other party's soft hands in his grasp. "I have missed you," Luo Ruoxin whispered as she gazed deeply into Zhongxian's eyes. Zhongxian nodded before replying telepathically, "I miss you, too." "Right, I have a great art of inner demons with me here. Do you want to learn it?" "Great art of inner demons?" Luo Ruoxin frowned. "Indeed. This secret art allows inner demons to strengthen their existence, allowing them to exist as a separate entity from their host. It's really powerful, so do you want to learn it?" Zhongxian continued saying telepathically. "Luo Ruoxin, don't worry, I have fused this cultivation technique together with the heritage of the soul oracles, spirit awakeners, and many other occupations. If you still don't believe me, why don't I recite a portion of the secret art to you so that you can make a judgment yourself?" Grabbing the other party's hands so tightly that she was unable to struggle free, Zhongxian began reciting. An inner demon, in essence, is a unique type of spirit whose existence is chained to the thoughts of a sentient being, similar to a separate persona of the individual. In crucial moments, it can arise and inflict a critical blow to the individual. However, along with the death of the individual, the inner demon will vanish from existence as well. Why should inner demons be damned to remain subordinates of other beings? Why can't inner demons struggle free from this cruel fate that the heavens have condemned them to? If those words have struck a chord in your heart, my great art of inner demons will be the perfect book for you. This. Luo Ruoxin's eyes gradually glazed over as she listened to Zhongxian's words, and unknowingly, her hands began to tremble in agitation. "How is it? Interested in learning it? If you want to learn it, acknowledge me as your teacher, and I'll impart it to you," Zhongxian said. Luo Ruoxin kneeled to the floor and cried, "Teacher, Pu." Following Luo Ruoxin's kneeling, Zhongxian seemed to vaguely hear the sound of someone spurting blood. Chapter 12:14 Trapped. Good. Zhongxian swiftly imparted the great art of inner demons to Luo Ruoxin before instructing, "All right, revert to your original form." "Yes, teacher." Luo Ruoxin's silhouette blurred before reverting to the appearance of an inner demon. Its figure was permeated with a demonic air that seemed to send one's thoughts into disarray upon sight. "What's your name?" Zhongxian asked. "My name. I was born just a moment ago from your thoughts, so I don't have a name yet," the inner demon replied sheepishly. "I see. Since that's the case, why don't I give you a name? Let me think." Zhongxian pondered for a moment. "All right, I'll call you Demonaire then." "Teacher, thank you for bestowing me with a name," Demonaire replied gleefully. "Demonaire, Demonaire. There was a nice ring to the name that his teacher had given him. "All right, you can go out now." While Demonaire was still immersed in the delight from being given a name, he suddenly heard the voice of the young man, and he quickly nodded. The next moment, the pitch-black space abruptly vanished without a trace. The surroundings before Zhongxian blurred, and before he knew it, he found himself standing right before the lake once more, as if what had just happened was merely a dream. Seeing that Zhongxian had regained consciousness, Zhong Zhouxiao quickly asked worriedly, "Zhongshe, are you all right?" Turning around, Zhongxian saw the entire group looking at him worriedly, as if fearing that something would happen to him. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Zhongxian waved his hand. Noting how Zhongxian seemed to be completely fine, devoid of the slightest disorientation in his mental state, Zhong Zhouxiao asked, "You didn't encounter any inner demons?" The lake could reflect the inner desires within one's heart, and these desires were the perfect tool to generate inner demons within one. There was no way their enemy would have passed on this opportunity to deal with them. Inner demons were the greatest fear of cultivators, capable of magnifying their greatest fears to put them through unbearable mental torture. So how could Zhongshe have returned completely fine? "I encountered one," Zhongxian replied leisurely. "Come out and greet my companions." "Yes." A black mist suddenly appeared before Zhongxian, and it gradually morphed into the form of an inner demon. It respectfully bowed to the others and said, "Demonaire pays respect to my teacher's companions. That is, an inner demon." The lips of the entire group twitched as their eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets from disbelief. That was a living inner demon, in the real world. Greeting them respectfully, "Principal Zhong, what is going on?" Division Head Liao asked with quivering lips. As the head of the Heart Division, he had read countless books regarding inner demons, and he knew very well that inner demons were existences bound to the thoughts of a cultivator, so it should have been impossible for them to exist in the real world. Furthermore, born from the darkness of an individual's heart, they were malicious beings who craved to destroy, so how could there possibly be one that was this obedient? Before Zhongxian could respond, Demonaire readily replied with the utmost admiration in his tone. "Teacher has enlightened me from the darkness I was in. If not for him, I might still have been living my days groggily within a living hell. It's truly a huge blessing that I was able to meet my teacher." Enlightened? Teacher? The faces of the group twitched so intensely that it felt as if they would fling their cheeks off their faces. Surely inner demons could not be considered an independent life form. Even inner demons could have teachers. There's no need to get so caught up with a matter as trivial as this. Speaking of which, do any of you want to give the lake a try? Zhongxian gestured to the lake as he spoke. After a long moment of silence, Zhong Zhouxiao raised his hand and said, "I'll give it a try." He had come here before, and he knew that the inner desires reflected in the lake could give rise to inner demons within one's heart. But for an inner demon to accept a cultivator as its teacher, this was really his first time seeing something as bewildering as that. At the same time, it also made him extremely excited. He suddenly felt as if a brand new world had opened up before his eyes, and he felt tempted to give it a try too. Zhongxian infused a portion of his will into Zhong Zhouxiao's body before gesturing for the latter to take a look in the lake. "All right, go ahead and take a look." "All right." Turning his gaze to the lake, Zhong Zhouxiao immediately saw countless inner desires stacked upon one another surfacing on top of the lake, and these images seemed to resonate in his mind as well, leaving him feeling as if he would go insane. Hong Long. He immediately tried to sever these inner desires from his mind, but before he could do so, his surroundings suddenly faded. Just like what had happened to Zhongxian earlier, he found himself plunged into darkness. Hula! A towering demon slowly rose before Zhong Zhouxiao's eyes, and there was a savage sneer on his lips. Upon seeing the appearance of Zhong Zhouxiao's inner demon, the will that Zhongxian had left within the latter's body widened his eyes in disbelief. His inner demon, Ismi? Who would have expected that he would actually be the greatest inner demon of the offspring of the Zhong clan? "I will surely surpass you." Zhong Zhouxiao had initially entered with the intention of accepting the inner demon as his student, but upon seeing the inner demon, his eyes immediately glazed over in confusion, and he began shouting frenziedly at the top of his lungs. Unlike Zhongxian, who could control his own state of mind, as soon as the inner demons appeared, the negative emotions that he had bottled up in his mind suddenly burst forth, consuming his consciousness whole, robbing him of his rationality. Surpass me. You wield great potential, but it's a pity that the cultivation technique you wield is beneath mine. However, if you cultivate according to my words, you might just be able to stand a chance. The inner demon tempted with a beguiling voice. Zhong Jiuxiao struggled internally for a moment, but eventually, he still caved in. Very well then. So, this is what it is like when an ordinary cultivator encounters inner demons. Zhongxian was astonished. So far, he had encountered inner demons on 3 occasions. It was only on his first encounter, during his Saint Ascension ordeal back in the Qiuwu Palace, that he had been beguiled for a brief moment. As for the remaining 2 times, he had been able to retain his consciousness. He had thought that most cultivators would have been the same as him, but it seemed like that was far from the case. From the very start, the very existence of the inner demons reflected the inability of the cultivator to control their heart, resulting in an opening for the inner demon's birth. As a result, it was not too difficult for an inner demon to breach a cultivator's mental resilience and drive them berserk. Alright, I should start cleaning up now. After learning how inner demons were born, Zhongxian's will finally emerged from where it was hidden. Little demon, come. I'll accept you as my student. Will Jiuxiao be fine? Looking at Zhong Jiuxiao's shaking silhouette before the lake, the faces of the group turned grim. Principal Zhong has a deep understanding of inner demons. Since he was the one who gestured for Zhong Jiuxiao to head over, there shouldn't be a problem, Division Head Liao replied. I hope so. At that moment, Zhong Jiuxiao suddenly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air before slowly opening his eyes. Who? Following which, a pitch-black demon appeared before everyone's eyes. Zhongxian turned to the demon and commanded, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and greet my companions. Yes, teacher. Demon B pays respect to my teacher's companions, the inner demon greeted respectfully. Demon B? Hearing that name, Demoner fell into a daze. Why did it feel like there was something wrong with that name? In the midst of his bewilderment, it heard its teacher speaking once more. Who's next? I'll give it a try, too, Division Head Liao said before walking forward. Not too long later, another inner demon surfaced before everyone's eyes, and it immediately bowed respectfully. Demon C pays respect to my teacher's companions. Demon D pays respect to my teacher's companions. Demoner, Demon B, Demon C, Demon D. A, B, C, D. At this point, Demoner finally understood what was going on, and it nearly spurted blood. It had been gleeful about the name that Zhongxian had given it, but who would have thought that it was actually such a casual one? Looking at the neat row of inner demons before him, Zhongxian nodded in satisfaction. Alright, we have 4 inner demons now. Who else wants to give it a try? Allow me. Division Head Wei stepped forward. Boom. But before he could get to the lake, the ground suddenly tremored intensely. Amid violent waves, the water level in the lake fell swiftly, as if someone had pulled open the plug in a bathtub. When the lake had finally been emptied of water, a flight of stone steps slowly rose, leading deep underground. Not expecting the lake to suddenly dry out when he had only acquired 4 inner demons, Zhongxian frowned in displeasure. What's going on? I haven't collected enough inner demons yet. Before Zhongxian could finish his words, the eerie voice from before echoed once more, but this time, it seemed to be quivering with anger. If you wish to meet me, come down. It was no wonder Vicious was furious. He had thought that as long as he could get the group to look into the lake, he would be able to generate inner demons within their minds and successfully put them under his control, turning them into his subordinates. Yet, the other party had ended up collecting the inner demons as his students instead. At this rate, not only would he not be weakening the other party's fighting prowess, he would even be bolstering their forces instead. The reason I am breeding inner demons in your mind is to use it to control you all, not to turn them into tools for your usage. The more Vicious thought about it, the more furious he felt. If not for the fact that he had been sealed underground and was unable to make a move personally, he definitely would have charged right up to kill Zhongxian with a single slap. He had met plenty of people who did not go by the book in his lifetime, but this was the first time he had seen one who ripped the book into shreds without a care in the world. Unforgivable. Hearing Vicious' voice, Zhongxian sighed deeply before beckoning for the group to head down the stone stairs. Let's carry on then. Even though the lake had only receded a moment ago, there was not the slightest dampness or mud on the stone steps. It was unknown what the stone steps were made of, but the area was so dark that it was extremely difficult for the group to make out their surroundings. Zhong Jiuxiao flicked his wrist and took out a couple of night illumination pearls before tossing them forward. Their warm glow provided some light for the group's passage forward. Eventually, they arrived at a vast hall. Due to the limited light in the area, they were not able to fully make out the situation within the hall. Zhongxian stood at the forefront of the group, leading the way forward. Upon stepping into the hall, Zhongxian saw many corpses lying in the area. From the amount of dirt that had accumulated on the corpses, it could be seen that they had already been dead for many years. Yet, bizarrely, the corpses remained perfectly intact physically, just that they were without their souls. Soulless metal humanoids. This. Zhongxian frowned. Through the tattered rags that remained on the corpses, he could tell that most of them were master teachers, and they had all been forged into metal humanoids. Zhongxian narrowed his eyes in fury. At this moment, he suddenly heard Ji Shi's astonished voice. Vice Pavilion Master Liu. Turning his gaze over, he saw Ji Shi standing over one of the soulless metal humanoids with anxiety in his eyes. Vice Pavilion Master Liu? Yes, he's the vice head of our Northern Meadows City Master Teacher Pavilion. His full name is Liu Yu, and he went missing 3 years ago. I thought that he had gone into seclusion to push for a breakthrough, but who would have thought? Ji Shi's voice trembled in horror, and a lump at the back of his throat cut off the rest of his words. This. Zhongxian was intending to console Ji Shi when Wu Shi suddenly walked up to one of the soulless golden humanoids as well and exclaimed, Elder Xing. One of the elders from the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion explained, Elder Xing is an elder of our Master Teacher Pavilion, and he disappeared 8 years ago. How could he be here, too? As the group proceeded forward under the glow of the night illumination pearls, they swiftly found many familiar faces. Almost all of them were primordial spirit realm master teachers. Most of them had disappeared in the past 20 years, and most had thought that they had either gone into isolation or had died. Yet, for them to have all been captured and converted into these darned things. Unforgivable. Zhongxian sighed deeply. There's no saving them anymore. They have all been converted into soulless metal humanoids, empty vessels for soul oracles to maneuver. Damn it. Wu Shi's face reddened in rage. I'll have this matter reported to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and have them exact vengeance for all of them, to kill so many master teachers and forge them into puppets. There's no way I'll let that bastard get away scot-free. Here he, report to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, you say? Vicious voice sounded once more. I'm afraid that it is already too late for you to do so. Voila. Right after those words were spoken, the hall suddenly shook intensely, and a loud crashing sound echoed behind them. Turning around, they saw that a massive boulder had already sealed the entrance that they had entered through. Recognizing the artifact, Zhongxian's face darkened. Dragon Severing Lock. It was the Dragon Severing Lock that was specially forged by celestial designers. Judging from how resilient it would be difficult for even a leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle expert to break it. Hula. While the group was still in shock, the soulless metal humanoid in the area suddenly opened their eyes simultaneously. Chapter 1215 Encircle Men. There were at least several hundred of these soulless metal humanoids. Under the glow of the night illumination pearls, their black eyes seemed to reflect crimson instead, giving them an extremely sinister appearance. It felt as if countless corpses had suddenly risen around them in the middle of a graveyard. This is bad. Alarmed, the group quickly gathered together before scanning their surroundings warily. Since the entrance had been sealed by the Dragon Severing Lock, there was no way they could escape from where they came from. Their only choice would be to proceed forward, but at the same time, it seemed like there were countless more soulless metal humanoids lying ahead of them, and there was no way they could fend off so many of them simultaneously. Voila! Before the group could recover from their shock, a soulless metal humanoid suddenly charged at them furiously before striking forward with its palm. Its palms strike with overflowing with strength, leaving the group feeling deeply pressured. These soulless metal humanoids were at primordial spirit realm pinnacle prior to their death, and through a unique technique, their bodies and junshi have remained completely intact, thus allowing them to retain most of their strength during the conversion. More importantly, they don't fear death, and they will rise again and again after being struck down. Zhongxian narrowed his eyes sharply. He had not expected Vicious to actually capture more than 100 Saint 4 Dan master teachers to forge them all into soulless metal humanoid. Humph! Division head Wei harumphed as he stepped forward to knock back the assaulting soulless metal humanoid with a powerful palm strike before charging forward to tear it apart. Suddenly, one of the elders from the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion blocked his path at the crucial moment and said, "This person is Elder Wang from our Master Teacher Pavilion. We were close buddies for many years. If possible, please don't injure his corpse. I would like to take him back with me and give him a proper burial." Elder Zeng, Division Head Wei bellowed angrily after hearing those words. Making use of this short opening, the soulless metal humanoid charged forward and crashed heavily into Division Head Wei, causing the latter to spurt a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the other soulless metal humanoids slowly rose from the ground, seemingly preparing to make their moves as well. Seeing how Elder Zeng was still firmly blocking his way, Division Head Wei bellowed in displeasure, "If we don't kill him, we will be the ones who are killed. If you want to die here, be my guest. Just don't drag the rest of us down." But the face of the Elder Zeng turned incredibly ugly. He knew many of the corpses lying the area, and there were a couple of them who had been close friends with him over the past several centuries. He felt that the least he could do for them was take their bodies back intact and give them a proper burial, in hopes that they could at least rest in peace after death. But looking at the current situation, he also realized that such thoughts would only lead to the downfall of the group. Boom! While Elder Zeng was still conflicted over what he should do, one of the soulless metal humanoids suddenly charged his way and clawed at him. Elder Hu. Seeing the other party's face, Elder Zeng's eyes widened in astonishment as many emotions gushed into his mind. This resulted in his body moving slower by half a beat, and deep gorges were torn through his shoulder, causing him to bleed profusely. Seeing that Elder Zeng was still hesitating due to his ties with the deceased, Zhongxian bellowed, "Elder Zeng, that person isn't Elder Hu anymore. His soul has already long dissipated, and is nothing more than a puppet right now." The members of the Combat Master Hall had been through many life-and-death situations, so they knew how to toss aside their emotions and move decisively in moments of danger. On the other hand, the members of the Master Teacher Pavilion happened to be lacking in this aspect. They tended to allow sentiments to affect their judgment in such critical situations. Elder Zeng frowned in distress, but eventually, he bit his lips tightly and roared, "Yes." Taking a deep breath, he raised his palm and collided head-on with the Elder Hu's soulless metal humanoid. Peng peng peng. At the same time, the soulless metal humanoids in the area also rushed forward and surrounded the crowd. Hualala. With so many primordial spirit realm experts acting against them simultaneously, the group was swiftly placed in a deeply disadvantageous position, and it seemed as if they would cave in very soon. After knocking away two soulless metal humanoids, Division Head Liao asked anxiously, "Principal Zhong, what do we do?" These fellows knew neither pain nor death. Only when their heads were severed would they finally fall lifelessly back to the ground. Against a troop of more than 100 of such primordial spirit realm puppets, even though their group wielded considerable fighting prowess as well, the situation was terrible for them. The soulless metal humanoids can only move under another's control. As long as we can find the person manipulating them, we will be able to resolve the current danger, Zhongxian said with a frown. Without a doubt, someone must have been controlling those lifeless puppets. As long as they could find and subdue the someone, they would be able to free themselves from the crisis they were in. Division Head Wei gritted his teeth and said, "Since that's the case, Principal Zhong, we'll hold the fort for the time being while you try to find the person behind the soulless metal humanoid. Everyone, get into formation." Protect Principal Zhong, Hall Master Xing, and Wu Shi, Huala. Right after saying those words, the group quickly formed a circle around Zhongxian, Hall Master Xing, and Wu Shi in order to protect them. The improved collaborative formation that Zhongxian had imparted to them had granted them a significant rise in their fighting prowess in team battles. As such, despite the simultaneous onslaught of over 100 soulless metal humanoid, they were surprisingly able to stand their ground, successfully warding the enemies off for the time being. Protected in the middle, the conflicted Wu Shi sent a telepathic message to Zhongxian. Principal Zhong, should we make a move? His injuries had long been healed by Zhongxian's Heaven's Path Shunqi, and the previous frailty he had displayed was nothing more than an act. There's no need for that at the moment. The both of you are our trump cards, and we can't afford to let this be known to the enemy yet, Zhongxian replied telepathically. But I fear that the others won't be able to hold on for too long, Wu Shi anxiously replied. Don't worry. These soulless metal humanoid might appear powerful, but it'll still be difficult for them to overcome the improved collaborative formation. For the time being, let me see who's controlling the puppets. If I'm lucky, I might be able to find a clue leading to the mastermind behind the Qingtian Emperor, Zhongxian said. In truth, with his prowess, he could have easily broken the encirclement of the 100 soulless metal humanoid. The reason he had chosen not to make a move was to act weak in hopes that it would cause the fellow behind the soulless metal humanoids to lower his guard and, possibly, lure him out and capture him. If that person was vicious himself, that would be even better. Once he found the other party's location and weakness, he would be able to launch a surprise attack and subdue the other party in a single move. If so, the crisis surrounding the Master-Teacher Pavilion could be resolved once and for all. Activating his Eye of Insight while extending his spiritual perception forth simultaneously, Zhongxian began assessing the soulless metal humanoids carefully. There seemed to be crimson sparks in each of their eyes, and if his deduction was correct, they seemed to be some kind of medium to relay an individual's will. Most likely, someone was relaying their commands to the soulless metal humanoid through the crimson sparks, thus driving them into action. Let me see where the will traces to. Zhongxian randomly picked out a soulless metal humanoid, and concentrating the prowess of his Eye of Insight, he vaguely saw a narrow thread linked to the sparks of flame in the puppet's eyes. The narrow thread was not just attached to the eyes of that single puppet, there was a thread present for all of the soulless metal humanoids within the room, crisscrossing with one another as if a fish net. All the threads eventually converged together into the depths of the hall. What powerful soul energy! Zhongxian's expression turned grim. For an individual to manipulate more than 100 soulless metal humanoid to attack them simultaneously using different moves was an incredibly difficult task, requiring an unbelievably level of multitasking. This could only possibly be carried out by one who possessed extremely powerful soul energy, and even Zhongxian was not confident that he would necessarily be able to do the same. Zhongxian frowned. There's a formation blocking us in front. Gazing ahead, before he could see the other end of the thread, a formation blocked his view, preventing him from seeing any further. If he could not reach the other end of the thread, he would not be able to uncover Vicious' true position. If so, their group would remain in a disadvantageous position, being in the open whereas the enemy remained hidden in the shadows. Hold on for a little longer, I'll quickly go ahead to take a look, Zhongxian said before leaping out of the group's protection. He swiftly flew toward where the threads were converging. Only while their group appeared to be in a disadvantageous position would the other party continue manipulating the puppets, allowing him to trace the other party down via the threads. Otherwise, once all the soulless metal humanoids were destroyed, the threads would be severed, making it impossible for him to track down the other party. Hula! Before Zhongxian could get far, 3 soulless metal humanoids suddenly charged toward him with rampaging might, seemingly wanting to tear him into pieces. Principal Zhong, be care! Division Head Liao shouted. But before he could finish his word, Zhongxian abruptly leaped into the air. Without even paying a glance to the soulless metal humanoid, he stepped lightly in the air. Pada! 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 The 3 soulless metal humanoids fell forcefully back onto the ground, buried deep into the earth. The soulless metal humanoids instinctively struggled furiously, wanting to free themselves. Yet, as if there was a mountain weighing on them, they found themselves unable to escape at all. Powerful. Division Head Liao's lips twitched wildly. Those soulless metal humanoids did not even fear death, making them difficult opponents even for a combat master like him. Yet, with just a light step in the air, Zhongxian managed to forcefully pin 3 of them to the ground. Just from this, he could tell that even 3 of him would not be a match for Zhongxian. Just half a month ago, he barely escaped from our grasp, but now, he has already become a formidable expert possessing strength far surpassing us. His talent is truly. Division Head Liao shook his head with a helpless smile. It had not been too long ago when he, Hall Master Xing, and Division Head Wei were able to easily subdue the young man, almost killing him even. While the young man's combat sense was formidable, his strength and speed had been still severely lacking, making him far from a match for them. But now, he could already see that even if the 3 of them were to collaborate once more to deal with him, they would be utterly defeated within moment. Having lived for several centuries, he had encountered plenty of geniuses in his time, but the rate at which this young man was growing was truly inconceivable, possibly unseen throughout history. Not knowing that the blow he had executed casually would actually leave Division Head Liao so immensely shocked, Zhongxian continued advancing forward after subduing the 3 soulless metal humanoids with a single step. Peng 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 peng. This time, it was even more exaggerated. Without even making a move, all of the soulless metal humanoid that attempted to charge at him were suddenly pinned against the ground or the wall, unable to break free no matter how desperately they struggled. At embryonic soul realm pinnacle, Zhongxian's fighting prowess was already comparable to a leaving aperture realm intermediate stage cultivator. His might was not something that those primordial spirit realm soulless metal humanoids could compare to. While knocking down more than 20 soulless metal humanoids that charged toward him, Zhongxian finally arrived at the very end of the hall. The threads abruptly vanished into the depths of the wall at this point. Is this a mechanism from a celestial designer? Zhongxian took a look at the wall before him and frowned. Through his eye of insight, he could tell that the wall before him was actually a mechanism, and the fellow controlling the soulless metal humanoid was hidden right behind it. This mechanism might have been able to stop other cultivators, but against me. Shaking his head, Zhongxian placed his palm lightly on it. Hula! A book emerged in the library of Heaven's Path. Zhongxian placed his finger on the book, and the knowledge contained within it was swiftly transferred into his mind. Reading the details, Zhongxian shook his head. It's actually the work of a 7-star pinnacle celestial designer. It seems like there's a fairly skilled celestial designer among the soulless metal humanoids. While there was not a celestial designer guild in Qingyuan City, there were still branches in the other cities around the Qingyuan Empire. The handicraft of a 7-star pinnacle celestial designer would have been difficult for an ordinary cultivator to decipher, but Zhongxian was different. Through the analysis of the Library of Heaven's Path, he had already managed to grasp the ins and outs of the mechanism fully. Using his finger as a sword, he swiftly tapped the mechanism 8 times. Catcher, catcher. A few mechanical clicks echoed in the air. Following which, the wall before him parted down the middle, revealing a long tunnel. The abruptly halted threads continued into the depths of the tunnel. Without any hesitation, Zhongxian proceeded into the tunnel. However, barely after taking 2 steps, a surge of sword chi suddenly flew forth for his glabella. Chapter 12:16 Crimson Emerald Duplet Swordsmanship. What? Zhongxian narrowed his eyes in astonishment as sweat poured down his body. The sword chi was extremely swift, moving as fast as a streak of lightning. Not only that, it also harnessed formidable might within it. Even with Zhongxian's recent surge in cultivation, he instantaneously realized that it would be difficult for him to clash with that sword chi face-on at a whim. Thus, with a slight step, he executed the unbounded Voyager. As if space had been compressed, that slight step allowed Zhongxian to cover 3 meters in an instant, placing him right next to the wall. Voila! At the same time, the sword chi flew by him with a cold gale, vanishing into the distance. That was a close one. It was fortunate that he had recently gained a deeper comprehension of the laws of space and the unbounded Voyager, Or else that single surge of sword chi might have just left him severely wounded. That should be around. Leaving aperture realm primary stage. Zhong Xian clenched his fists tightly as he made a rough estimate. It was a very brief encounter, but it had allowed Zhong Xian to verify the strength of the enemy leaving aperture realm primary stage, as well as an expert in swordsmanship. He was already capable of facing such an opponent with his current strength, but there was still a need for him to be wary around them. In a clash between experts, the slightest moment of carelessness could cost one's life. For example, if he had not reacted swiftly to the sudden assault, he would have fallen there and then. Tzzzzzzzz. Barely after Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief, a powerful killing intent suddenly permeated the area as two more surges of sword chi flew over, one from the front and one from the back. In this narrow tunnel, these two surges of sword chi were more than enough to seal his path, leaving him nowhere to hide. Humph! Knowing that he could not dodge as he did previously, Zhong Xian flicked his wrist and whipped out his glacier rain sword. With a powerful slash, he collided with the two surges of sword chi. While the glacier rain sword was only a Saint low-tier artifact, it was still able to display astounding prowess when paired with Zhong Xian's mastery in swordsmanship. A deafening sonic boom echoed in the air, and the resulting powerful shockwave blasted the top layer off the walls of the tunnel. Wang! Zhong Xian's glacier rain sword creaked under the overwhelming pressure it was placed under against the two surges of sword chi, nearly shattering. Nevertheless, it still managed to fend off the two surges of sword chi. Knowing that he would remain at a critical disadvantage if he continued clashing with the enemy within the narrow tunnel, Zhong Xian swiftly made use of this opportunity to advance forward. Hualala! His movements were quick, but the enemy's sword chi was even quicker. Barely after taking 2 steps, he felt sword chi tearing toward him once more. This time, there were 4 surges. If he forced his way through, there was a good chance that he would be sliced into tiny pieces. Thus, Zhong Xian flicked his glacier rain sword to fend off the sword chi once more. However, it seemed as if the opponent was simply getting started and was building up more momentum as the battle continued. After 4 surges, the enemy flung 6 surges of sword chi at him, and astoundingly, the strength of each sword chi was even stronger than the previous wave. This seems to be a type of sword formation or some kind of unique sword art. Even though Zhong Xian had no idea who was behind the attacks, he could tell that the sword chi was the product of some kind of formidable sword formation or sword art. Not daring to get careless, he drove the zhunqi within his body and tapped the area ahead of him lightly. Wang! In an instant, it felt as if space itself had turned viscous. The 6 surges of sword chi significantly slowed down, posing no more threat to Zhong Xian. With a series of slashes with the glacier rain sword, Zhong Xian managed to overcome each of them. Just as he was about to advance once more, 8 surges of sword chi arrived in his vicinity. Following the previous pattern, the 8 surges of sword chi were each stronger than the previous 6. With their overwhelming might, they actually caused the viscous space that Zhong Xian had just set up earlier to shake intensely, and with a resounding huala, it dissipated altogether. Deng 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 deng. Suffering a power backlash, Zhong Xian was forced to retreat 2 steps before coughing up a mouthful of blood. He swiftly stretched a hand forward and gathered his zhunqi before his palm in the form of a sphere to defend himself from the powerful onslaught of sword chi. The powerful surges of sword chi had really taken him by surprise this time around. Upon reaching embryonic soul realm pinnacle, his fighting prowess was already comparable to a leaving aperture realm intermediate stage cultivator. Yet, despite his strength, he ended up being knocked back by just a couple of sword chi surges. A thought suddenly came to Zhong Xian's mind. Each wave of sword chi is faster and stronger than the last. Could this be the legendary Crimson Emerald Duplet swordsmanship? Having read all the books in the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall, he was rather familiar with the legendary formations and battle techniques that had appeared in the history of the Qingyuan Empire many years ago. There had been 2 extremely talented sword practitioners in the Combat Master Hall. They had managed to earn the opportunity to head to the Qianchong Empire's Sword Lagoon, and over there, they had comprehended a unique sword formation known as the Crimson Emerald Duplet swordsmanship. In a sense, it could also be considered as a collaborative formation centered around swords. Through the sheer might of the sword formation, they had been able to overwhelm even leaving Aperture Realm intermediate stage cultivators with ease. But more than 1,000 years ago, the duo had abruptly gone missing without leaving behind their heritage, and there were many who presumed that they had died. However, to see this legendary sword formation appear here, could it be that the duo had been killed by Vicious, and their bodies had been forged into soulless metal humanoids? If that was the case, Zhongxian would truly be in a bad position. If I can't see them in action, I won't be able to compile a book on them and analyze the flaws in the battle technique. This won't do. If I continue wasting time here, once the battle on the other side ends, the threads will disappear along with the only clue we have leading to Vicious at the moment, Zhongxian thought grimly. Knowing that he could not afford to waste any time, he decisively flicked his wrist to take the massive golden origin cauldron out. Pave a way forward. Roger that. Don't worry, Master. They are only a bunch of weaklings. Watch how I, ding ding, crush them into smithereens. Roaring furiously, the golden origin cauldron began on a ferocious charge through the tunnel. Ding ding dang dang. The sword chi produced a resounding metallic echo upon coming into contact with the golden origin cauldron, but it did little to slow its movements. After being infused with the black gold crystal ore, the defense of the golden origin cauldron had been enhanced by leaps and bounds. On top of that, the golden origin cauldron's cultivation had also reached leaving Aperture Realm advanced stage, 2 cultivation stages higher than the assailants. As powerful as the enemy's sword chi was, they were still unable to overcome the golden origin cauldron's defenses. Seeing how the golden origin cauldron was able to deal with the sword formation with ease, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief as he followed closely behind it. The narrow tunnel was roughly 80 meters long, so it did not take him too long to arrive at the other end. What he was met with was another large hall. This hall had clearly been manually dug out, and it was roughly 100 meters in diameter. Upon entering the hall, Zhongxian's spiritual perception was no longer limited by the previous formation. Thus, he extended it, and he soon noticed 2 figures swiftly retreating from him. While those 2 figures appeared no different from ordinary humans on the surface, be it in terms of skin, hair, or flesh, the lack of expression on their faces betrayed their identities as soulless metal humanoids. Do you think that I'll allow you to get away that easily after assaulting me? Zhongxian sneered coldly as he raised his palm. Boom! An imposing force burst forth with astounding momentum toward the duo. Heavenly Demon Great Sorrow Palm. Sensing the powerful might of the palm art, the 2 soulless metal humanoids swiftly turned around to defend against the palm with the swords in their hands. However, having broken their sword formation, the momentum they had built up all this while had vanished without a trace. As such, the might of their sword chi was only comparable to the first wave of assault that they had launched previously. Zhongxian's Heavenly Demon Great Sorrow Palm crushed their sword chi in a flash. Following which, the sound of ribcage shattering filled the hall as the 2 soulless metal humanoids were smacked into the wall. Seeing how Zhongxian incapacitated the both of them with a single blow, the golden origin cauldron exclaimed anxiously, "Master, please leave one of them to me." This was a rare opportunity for it to try out its newfound strength, so naturally, it wanted cannon fodder to pummel as well. "Fine, I'll leave them to you then," Zhongxian said. His main goal was Vicious. As for these small fries, it would suffice to render them powerless. Wonderful. Hearing those words, the golden origin cauldron exclaimed in excitement. It immediately charged forward and crashed right into one of the 2 soulless metal humanoids with its powerful body. Paji. The soulless metal humanoid did not even last for an instant before being reduced to a pancake plastered on the wall. Ha 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 ha, there's no one who is a match for Grandpa Ding. Ha 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 ha. Gripped with excitement, the golden origin cauldron burst into laughter before abruptly turning to face the remaining soulless metal humanoid. Horrified, the soulless metal humanoid swiftly struggled free from the wall and began to run away. Do you think that you will be able to flee from your Grandpa Ding? Harumphing coldly, the golden origin cauldron charged forward once more. Perhaps realizing that it would not be able to outrun the golden origin cauldron, the soulless metal humanoid drew its sword and launched a powerful chop toward it. The powerful chop produced a crisp metallic sound on the golden origin cauldron before the sword abruptly snapped into 2. Following which, The soulless metal humanoid was smacked into the wall. Paji. Its bones were immediately shattered into non-existence, and it became another painting on the wall, just like the previous soulless metal humanoid. Ah! Zhongxian was rendered speechless. He had thought that the golden origin cauldron would only subdue them. After all, these two soulless metal humanoids had once been honorable experts of the Combat Master Hall, so it would have been good to have Hall Master Xing take them back to be buried. Yet, who would have thought that the golden origin cauldron would actually destroy their bodies so utterly? Oh well, it was not a big deal. Ultimately, they were already dead. It would suffice to relinquish their bodies from vicious control and allow them to rest in peace. Besides, the combat masters of the Combat Master Hall were not as sentimental as the Master Teacher Pavilion. On the battlefield, there was nothing more important than preserving one's life, so how could they possibly have attention to spare for any of those formalities? Eye of insight. Zhongxian began tracing down the threads once more, only to find that they extended underground. Zhongxian walked over and placed his hand on the area where the threads disappeared. As expected, there was a trapdoor there. Zhongxian lightly pushed it open with his forefinger. Jeji. Jeji. Instead of entering the trapdoor immediately, Zhongxian beckoned for the golden origin cauldron. Come over here for a moment. Coming. The golden origin cauldron swiftly flew over. Head in first to check if there is any danger inside, Zhongxian instructed. The sword chi he had faced in the tunnel had reminded him of the need to remain cautious in the ghost cavern. If not for the recent rise in his cultivation, he could have died under the onslaught of sword chi. In any case, since he had the golden origin cauldron, there was no need for him to take the risk to explore uncharted territory by himself. He could have the cauldron enter first, and depending on what it encountered, he would be able to take preparations in advance. Roger that, the golden origin cauldron replied before decisively jumping into the trapdoor. Pada. Master, I think that I am stuck. Zhongxian was speechless. The golden origin cauldron happened to be the perfect size to plug up the trapdoor. Never mind, come out first. Shaking his head, Zhongxian plucked the golden origin cauldron out before driving his zhenqi and stepping into the trapdoor himself warily. There was not a sound to be heard in the passageway beyond the trapdoor. Nevertheless, with the previous experience, Zhongxian dared not lower his guard. Holding the glacier rain sword tightly in his grasp, he proceeded forward a step at a time. Soon, he arrived at the very end of the flight of stairs. Surprisingly, the enemy did not spring a sudden assault on him this time around. Zhongxian flicked his wrist to whip out a night illumination pearl before tossing it on the ground ahead of him, lighting up the room before him. It was yet another vast hall, just like the one above. Scanning the room, a frown surfaced on Zhongxian's forehead. The threads manipulating the soulless metal humanoids vanished in this room, so he had expected to see Vicious there. But contrary to his expectations, there was not a person to be seen in the area. Jeji. Zhongxian was just about to scan the room thoroughly to see if he could find anything when the mechanical clicking of a mechanism suddenly echoed behind him. Turning around, he saw that the passageway that he had come from had already been sealed shut. While it was not the dragon-severing lock, it was not a seal that he could break within a short period of time either. Zhongxian was dazed for a moment before realization struck him. They are intending to separate me from Hall Master Xing and the others. At this point, it was clear that the other party's intention was to divide their group up so as to deal with them one by one. Knowing that there would be something lying in wait for him within the hall, he did not rush to break the seal. Instead, taking a deep breath, he began examining the hall carefully. Since you have already succeeded in isolating me from the rest of my group, isn't it about time for you to show yourself? A wise man you are, Zhongshe, a faint voice sounded from the depths of the hall. Following which, a human-like figure suddenly emerged from the wall on the opposite side. Thinking that it was an effect produced by some kind of illusion, Zhongxian did not pay much heed to it. However, when he took a closer look at the appearance of the figure, he could not help but frown. You still aren't dead. The person before him was none other than the person he had conducted soul search on back in Qingyuan City, the individual whom he had given Vicious to consume, the Qingtian Emperor. Chapter 1217 Cherry Popping. Wasn't the Qingtian Emperor dead? Why had he suddenly appeared in the ghost cavern? Dead? If I, the Qingtian Emperor, could be killed that easily, how could I possibly be qualified to rule over the entire Qingtian lineage? The Qingtian Emperor sneered coldly as the killing intent he emanated swiftly permeated the entire hall. What you killed was nothing more than a clone. A clone? Zhong Xian frowned. Tian Qing had been the incarnation of his will, so that could have been considered a clone. But to think that the copper-masked figure would actually only be a clone as well. The Qingtian Emperor sure had many cards up his sleeves. I spent 500 years maturing that clone from my severed soul. You sure had fun killing it, didn't you? It's about time to settle the grudges between us. Deep animosity was reflected in the eyes of the Qingtian Emperor. There was no such thing as a perfect disguise in the world. As an emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe, he was well aware of this fact. No matter how well he hid himself, walking amid the humans, it was only a matter of time before he exposed himself. Due to safety concerns, even the copper-masked figure was only a clone he had forged with great difficulty. On the other hand, he kept his main soul safely hidden within the ghost cavern. Even as a soul oracle who had inherited vicious knowledge, it had not been an easy feat for him to create a clone. He had paid an exceptionally heavy price and spent a whole 500 years nurturing his severed soul before he had managed to create the copper-masked figure, and yet, the young man before him had killed him. On top of that, there was also the matter with Tian Qing and his 10 kings. It was no joke to say that the young man had almost sent their Qingtian lineage into extinction single-handedly. Naturally, it went without saying how much he wanted to rip the young man into pieces and see him suffer. Tell me, how do you want to die? Perhaps, if I'm feeling merciful today, I might just grant your wish, the Qingtian Emperor mocked coldly. How about death by old age? Zhong Xian asked. You have no choice in this. The Qingtian Emperor harumphed angrily as the killing intent he emanated intensified. Boom. Suddenly, Zhong Xian felt a powerful force tugging at his soul, attempting to pull it out. Knowing that the other party was utilizing the soul-nabbing secret art, Zhong Xian frowned. While his soul was massive, due to the lack of suitable cultivation techniques, its fighting prowess was still severely limited. Currently, he was relying more on his physical body and zhenqi cultivation in fights. Given that his opponent was a Saint 5 Dan soul oracle, it would be disastrous for him if the fight became a battle between souls instead. Thus, Zhong Xian drove his Heaven's Path zhenqi to hold his soul firmly in place, preventing it from being taken. At the same time, he pushed his feet against the ground and dashed forward. Voila! In that instant, Zhong Xian seemed to have transformed into a sword himself, as if the sword in his hand was a mere extension of himself. Man-sword union. He had collected all the books concerning swordsmanship back at the Combat Master Hall's weapon division, allowing him to advance his Heaven's Path sword art to Saint Low tier. His man-sword union state had become far sharper and stronger than before, and the sword qi that shot forth from his blade formed a perfect arc as it headed toward the Qingtian Emperor. Not too bad. Not expecting the young man to be able to withstand his soul-nabbing secret art and even counterattack, the Qingtian Emperor narrowed his eyes menacingly. He immediately gave up his attempt to draw out Zhong Xian's soul and extended his hand forward instead. Wang. In an instant, the air around Zhong Xian seemed to have frozen, and the sword qi he had shot forward suddenly slowed down significantly. Zhong Xian's heart tensed. Leaving Aperture Realm Advanced Stage? He could easily deduce the Qingtian Emperor's cultivation just from that single move, and the latter was actually far stronger than the copper-masked figure. In the Leaving Aperture realm, a cultivator would have to undergo the lightning ordeal for each increment in their cultivation stage, and one who had reached advanced stage would have already undergone the lightning ordeal thrice. Such an opponent was not someone that an embryonic soul realm pinnacle cultivator like him could deal with. Break! Zhong Xian roared as he flicked his wrist forcefully and shot out an incredibly sharp burst of sword qi. The powerful might of the sword qi swiftly shattered the frozen air around him. But just as he finally felt the force surrounding his body loosen, he suddenly saw the Qingtian Emperor thrusting his palm over. Without much time to respond, Zhong Xian hurriedly raised his sword to defend against the other party's attack. As the set of actions was done in a rush, he was not able to gather his full might beforehand. Peng! The glacier rain sword was sent flying, lodging itself deeply into the wall not too far away. On the other hand, Zhongxian was also smacked into the ground, forming a huge depression beneath him. While he was able to rival opponents superior to him, he could only match leaving Aperture Realm intermediate stage opponents at the very maximum. Against advanced stage opponents, he was still severely lacking. After smacking Zhongxian into the ground, the Qingtian Emperor sneered coldly. "If this is all you have, it'll be difficult for you to escape death today." Another surge of killing intent burst across the room as his hand reached forth to deal the killing blow to the fallen Zhongxian. "You want to kill me? Let's see if you have the strength and the means to do so," Zhongxian said as he leaped up from the depression, and with a flick of his wrist, he formed a palm print before his hand and thrust it forward. Heavenly Demon Great Sorrow Palm. Boom! As the Heavenly Demon Great Sorrow Palm collided with the Qingtian Emperor, Zhongxian's face reddened once more, and he swiftly retreated 8 steps to ward off the might from the latter's attack. No matter what, the Qingtian Emperor was still the head of the Qingtian lineage, a monster who had lived for countless years. His comprehension of combat was nowhere beneath Zhongxian's, and he also possessed an advantage in terms of cultivation. Even with his full strength, Zhongxian was still unable to match the other parties directly. Realizing that Zhongxian did not stand a chance against him, the Qingtian Emperor hooked his fingers into steel claws and charged forward, sneering, "You talk arrogantly, but you don't have the strength to back it up. Allow me to send you on your way." Drawing on his full strength as a leaving Aperture Realm advanced stage expert, the Qingtian Emperor sealed the surroundings firmly, halting Zhongxian's movements. At the same time, a feeling of helplessness arose in Zhongxian's mind, leaving him feeling utterly despaired at the situation, as if he would not be able to make a difference no matter how hard he struggled. Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly. His attacks aren't just normal physical attacks. His assault is also infused with soul energy and a unique conception that can crush the minds of those possessing weaker mental resilience. On the surface, the Qingtian Emperor's assault appeared to be an ordinary claw, but through his deep comprehension of battle techniques, Zhongxian was still able to see through the crux of his maneuver with a glance. There were 2 layers of attacks to the Qingtian Emperor's offense. First, the suppression of zhenqi, and second, the erosion of one's mental resilience. In face of overwhelming might, it was common for one to overestimate the danger one was in and give up hope. For example, standing before the incredible momentum of an avalanche, if one allowed the feeling of helplessness and despair to consume one's mind, there was no way one would be able to escape even if one had the ability to do so. Realizing this pitfall, Zhongxian swiftly drove the Heaven's Path Soul Art, and the feeling of helplessness instantaneously vanished without a trace. Following which, with a swift step, he executed the Unbounded Voyager and successfully escaped the Qingtian Emperor's assault. At the same time, he made use of the opportunity to twist his body and retaliate with a flick of his finger. Grand Constellation Finger. Woo! As if a loosed arrow, the energy concentrated at the tip of Zhongxian's finger burst toward the Qingtian Emperor's eye. The Qingtian Emperor chuckled softly without any hint of anxiety in his voice. Instead, he turned around and counterattacked with a flick of his finger. "As expected of a 7-star pinnacle master teacher, you sure did notice my flaws rather quickly." Peng! A burst of light collided with the Grand Constellation Finger, and the 2 forces ended up neutralizing one another perfectly. However, possessing inferior strength, Zhongxian still ended up being forced to retreat once more. From the very start of the battle, he had been using his library of Heaven's Path to peer through the other party's flaws in order to come up with a countermeasure against him. However, the gap in terms of fundamental power between him and the Qingtian Emperor was simply too great, especially given the latter's ability to manipulate the surrounding environment. Even if he knew where the other party's Ming men lay, there was nothing he could do if his attacks could not even come close to the other party. At higher realms, it becomes harder and harder to exploit the Ming men of others. Zhongxian shook his head and sighed. When he was still at the fighter realm, he could easily defeat opponents many cultivation realms higher than him just by exploiting the latter's Ming men. However, as his cultivation grew, the opponents he faced became stronger and stronger, and the concepts of space became an integral part of battle as well. This limited his ability to abuse others' weaknesses. However, it was fortunate that this worked both ways. It was true that he would be unable to kill the Qingtian Emperor easily, but the reverse happened to be true as well. Clenching his hands tightly together into fists, Zhongxian began on a barrage of punches toward the Qingtian Emperor. Catcher! Catcher! A rift seemed to appear in the space before him as his fists fell relentlessly on the Qingtian Emperor at an unbelievable frequency. 1,000 punches of the lightning sea. This was a technique created by a leaving aperture realm expert who had suddenly happened upon inspiration in the midst of watching the lightning gathering for his leaving aperture ordeal. It was considered one of the stronger battle techniques in the Qingyuan Empire, and its power was further enhanced in Zhongxian's hands. Before he even fully brought out the full strength of the battle technique, the hall was filled with lightning. While the might of the 1,000 punches of the lightning sea could not be compared with the heavenly demon Great Sorrow Palm, it was harnessed with the power of lightning, which made it extremely effective. It was not exactly true to say that the more profound and powerful a battle technique was, the more effective it would be in battle. To truly maximize one's fighting prowess, the key lay in the effective use of battle techniques according to the situation instead. It was for this reason that experts would strive to create more battle techniques so that they would have a greater number of cards to play in battle. Not expecting a mere Saint 3 Dan embryonic soul realm cultivator to be able to withstand his assaults and even launch a counterattack, the Qingtian Emperor's face turned livid. He subconsciously took 2 steps back before spreading his hands open to claw at the barrage of punches around him. Voila! The lightning in the area suddenly dissipated into nothingness, as if some kind of mysterious might had burst them. I am a leaving aperture realm advanced stage cultivator, a person who has been through 3 lightning ordeals. Even the lightning from the heavens is unable to kill me. Did you really naively believe that this lightning attribute battle technique of yours would be able to phase me? The Qingtian Emperor harumphed coldly. A powerful surge of aura burst from the Qingtian Emperor, and for a moment, his presence suddenly seemed to tower, as if an infallible giant who could not be felled no matter what kind of means one used against him. I know that just lightning itself won't be sufficient to deal with you, but what if I paired that with my glacier rain sword? Zhongxian replied with a smirk. The Qingtian Emperor frowned. Your glacier rain sword? He distinctively recalled that he had knocked away the young man's sword at the very start of the battle. It should be lodged in the wall. With this thought in mind, he subconsciously turned his gaze toward where he remembered the glacier rain sword to be, and the next moment, his eyes narrowed in shock. Where's the sword? To his astonishment, the sword had already vanished from sight. At some point in time, the young man had actually managed to retrieve the sword behind his back. Why don't you try looking behind you? Zhongxian advised kindly as he gestured to the Qingtian Emperor's back. The Qingtian Emperor's eyes widened as he quickly turned around fearfully. However, there was nothing behind him at all. Damn, I fell for his trap. Realizing that he had been tricked, without even bothering to turn around to look at Zhongxian, he immediately leaped to the side in hopes to dodging any attack that could soon be landing on him. However, it was already too late. A dull pain pervaded his chest, and glancing downward, he realized that a palm had landed squarely on his body. Under the impact of the palm, his face paled, and he retreated multiple steps. As the young man had to move swiftly in order to launch this surprise assault, the palm strike did not wield too much strength, so he actually was not too severely injured by it. However, the very fact that he had been had by such a crude trick left him feeling deeply frenzied within. He was the emperor of the Qingtian lineage, an old monster who had lived for countless years, as well as a leaving aperture realm advanced stage expert. And yet, he had actually been injured by such a ridiculous maneuver conducted by a mere embryonic soul realm lad. Unforgivable. I'll kill you. Roaring furiously, the Qingtian Emperor drove the slaughter of Zhenqi in his body furiously as he prepared his strongest move. At that moment, however, the young man's voice sounded once more. Below you. Humph, once bitten, twice shy. Do you think that I'll fall for your crude ploys twice? Seeing that the young man was still taking him for a fool, the Qingtian Emperor clenched his jaws furiously in anger. But before he could make his move, he suddenly heard a woo sound beneath him, and his eyebrows shot up in alarm. Lowering his head, he saw the glacier rain sword, which should have been lodged in the wall, surging straight up toward him. Do you honestly think that a mere Saint Lotier sword will be able to kill me? Brat, you are really underestimating me far too much. The Qingtian Emperor sneered coldly as he directed the energy he had just gathered toward the sword. If his attack landed, the sword would surely shatter into innumerable pieces. But before he could exert his strength, a huge shadow suddenly loomed over him, and it was growing larger at an unbelievable pace. Glancing upward, he saw a massive cauldron plummeting straight for his head. Horrified, he instinctively redirected his strength upward to fend against the cauldron. Boom! Even though he was a leaving aperture realm advanced stage expert, he astonishingly realized that the falling cauldron was no weaker than him. The momentum with which the cauldron fell was simply so great that it ended up pushing his body downward. Pooha! The sword stabbed right into the opening of his alimentary canal. Red blood trickled down his thigh, as if signifying the blossoming of a new flower. A moment later, a piercing scream of agony resounded in the air. Chapter 12:18 Art of Cloning TSK. Zhong Xian clicked his tongue as he covered his eyes with his hands. It was so gruesome that he could not even bring himself to look at it. It was true that the glacier rain sword had followed him for many years, but now that it had been sullied by the other party in such a horrendous manner, how was he supposed to bring himself to use it in the future? Just thinking about the stench on it was enough to make him cringe. His poor glacier rain sword. Hopefully that poor sword will be able to walk out of its mental trauma from this incident one day. While Zhong Xian was pitying his weapon, the Qingtian Emperor felt as if he was going mad. He was an emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe, an incredibly noble and authoritative existence. In the first place, it was already humiliating that someone like him would have to personally deal with an embryonic soul realm brat, but to think that the brat would even pop his cherry at that. To make things worse, the cauldron above him was still shaking its massive bottom right above his face, as if trying to find a more comfortable position on his face to rest. An indescribable feeling of humiliation consumed his mind, pushing him toward the abyss of madness. All of you must die. Roaring furiously, the Qingtian Emperor drove his zhenqi of slaughter at full strength. Su. The sword that was lodged up his bottom was sent flying, and the massive cauldron was knocked off his face as well. Master, he's really powerful. Seeing how the other party was actually able to knock it off and singe its bottom red, the Golden Origin cauldron eyed the Qingtian Emperor warily. He's indeed powerful, Zhong Xian remarked grimly. He had already known that it would be hard for him to deal with the Qingtian Emperor with his current strength. The Golden Origin cauldron was at leaving aperture realm advanced stage as well, and while it possessed sufficient strength to fend off the Qingtian Emperor, it was not strong enough to kill the latter. Additionally, he did not want to expose vicious existence yet. As such, he had slowly made preparations to lure the Qingtian Emperor into his trap so as to launch a decisive two-pronged attack against the latter. He had thought that it would at least be able to incapacitate the Qingtian Emperor even if it was not sufficient to kill the latter, but who would have thought that the latter would actually be able to force the glacier rain sword out with his zhenqi? As expected of the Emperor of the Qingtian lineage, even his cherry was made of steel. Admirable indeed. Huala. At this moment, the Qingtian Emperor suddenly roared furiously, and all of a sudden, his body began growing bigger and bigger, as if he had eaten some kind of growth stimulant. In the blink of an eye, he had already grown to 3 meters tall. Seeing the sight before him, Zhong Xian blinked his eyes in a daze. What was the point of growing so big? With too large a physique, one's flexibility and agility would face a steep decline. Furthermore, there would also be a larger surface area for an enemy to strike. Thus, no cultivator would enlarge their size in battle unless there was a compelling reason to do so. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed as if the Qingtian Emperor was only putting himself in a disadvantageous situation. While Zhong Xian was still confused by what the Qingtian Emperor was up to, the latter suddenly used his right hand to grab his left hand and pulled forcefully. Sila. To Zhong Xian's horror, the Qingtian Emperor split in two. Is he committing suicide because he is unable to face the humiliation of being deflowered? Zhong Xian widened his eyes. Zhong Xian was not the only one bewildered by the current situation. The Golden Origin Cauldron was also flabbergasted. At the same time, the Glacier Rain Sword stopped its retching as it stared at the Qingtian Emperor as if it had seen a ghost. If anyone should commit suicide, the sword should have been the first one to do so. Sullied by the other party, it felt dirty from head to toe. Just the thought of what had happened earlier was enough to send its stomach, if it had one, churning in disgust. But did it cry? Did it cause a fuss? No. A person should live strong in this world, don't seek the end so easily. This applied to weapons as well, of course. Even when it was put through such agony, it still gritted its teeth and bore with it, believing that there would be a brighter future ahead. But as the emperor of the Qingtian lineage, why was the Qingtian emperor so weak-minded? To actually tear himself apart over something like this. He sure was vicious to himself. Was this some kind of custom among the otherworldly demonic tribe? While the human and the two artifacts were staring at the sight dumbstruck, vicious voice suddenly sounded in Zhongxian's head. Master, he's not bleeding. I think he has used some kind of secret art, so be careful. Secret art? Zhongxian frowned. Yuan. My memory is still in tatters, so I can't really remember clearly at this point, but from the looks of it, it seems like resemble a secret art exclusive to the emperors of the otherworldly demonic tribe. Vicious said. By bearing with the overwhelming pain from tearing oneself into two, that secret art allows one to divide oneself into two. Once it is successfully executed, it will effectively double one's fighting prowess. However, there is a limited duration to how long the secret art can be sustained for, and once that duration is over, one's cultivation will fall steeply. Most likely, the Qingtian emperor realized that he couldn't kill you, so he decided to go all out by using this secret art. Divide oneself into two. There's actually such a convenient secret art in the world. Zhongxian widened his eyes in disbelief. Just one Qingtian emperor had nearly cornered him. Once the other party successfully cloned himself, wouldn't he be in deep trouble? More importantly, the fighting prowess commanded by two Qingtian emperors was not as easy as 1+1. Both Qingtian emperors would share the same thoughts, allowing them to collaborate with perfect synergy. Without a doubt, they would be a far more difficult opponent to deal with than the Crimson Emerald duplet swordsmanship. Golden Origin Cauldron and Glacier Rain Sword, hurry up and stop that fellow. Zhongxian roared as he dashed forward without any hesitation. If he faced two Qingtian emperors there simultaneously, he really might lose his life. He had to stop the division of the Qingtian emperor at all cost. Voila! Before Zhongxian could arrive, his saber qi was already fast on its way toward the two halves of the Qingtian emperor. Using his palm as a saber, he intended to sever the latter's head before he could do anything. At the same time, the Golden Origin Cauldron and the Glacier Rain Sword had also rushed up to the Qingtian emperor to launch their most powerful attacks. But before any of the attacks could reach, the two halves of the Qingtian emperor suddenly squirmed uncontrollably, and in the blink of an eye, each of the two halves grew their other half, forming two complete, identical individuals. Peng! One of the Qingtian emperors stopped Zhongxian's saber qi with ease while the other one charged forward to smack him away, flinging him forcefully toward the wall. Zhongxian's face reddened, and fresh blood spewed from his mouth. Peng peng peng! Zhongxian quickly drove his Heaven's Path Shunqi to alleviate his injuries. When he raised his head once more, he saw that the Golden Origin Cauldron and the Glacier Rain Sword had been sent flying as well. One created a massive depression in the ground, whereas the other one ended up being deeply lodged in the wall once more. As expected, the combined fighting prowess of the two Qingtian emperors was indeed fearsome. Even though the Golden Origin Cauldron was a leaving Aperture Realm advanced stage expert as well, it still ended up being subdued in a single move. To have forced me to use this move, you can rest in peace now. The simultaneous speaking of the two identical Qingtian emperors had a bizarrely unnerving feeling to it. The two Qingtian emperors glared at Zhongxian coldly, dying to tear the young man into pieces. They had guarded their cherry fervently for so many years, and yet, the young man had actually popped it so casually. Just this alone was sufficient to make them lose their rationality. Which one is the clone, and which one is the main body? Zhongxian asked warily as he prepared himself to dodge the attacks from the Qingtian emperors. Even though it might have appeared to be an equal split, considering that one of them would disappear after some time, there was bound to be a main body and a clone among them. "I'll tell you by your grave," the two Qingtian emperors roared as they charged forward. Voila! In an instant, it felt as if the air in the hall had been replaced with killing intent, making every move that Zhongxian wanted to make incredibly difficult. "Block him!" Zhongxian roared at the Golden Origin Cauldron as he waved his hand to destroy the spatial seal hindering his movements. Upon hearing his instruction, the Golden Origin Cauldron charged toward the Qingtian emperors furiously, roaring, "You popped cherry brat! I'll relinquish my name as Ding Ding if I don't kill you today." Hearing the Golden Origin Cauldron's taunting, fury immediately blazed like an inferno in the eyes of the two Qingtian emperors. "You're courting your death." That was their greatest injury at the moment, and yet, that damned cauldron actually dared speak of it so easily. There was no way they would let the other party get away with that. Thus, one of the Qingtian emperors turned around to deal with the Golden Origin Cauldron. Boom, boom, boom. Before long, the duo began clashing with one another. Seeing that the Golden Origin Cauldron had managed to lure one of the Qingtian emperors away, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He swiftly flicked his wrist and drew a spear as he prepared to face the other Qingtian emperor. Just like the Glacier Rain Sword, the spear was a Saint Lotier spear as well. However, just like the other weapons in the Qiu Wu Palace, it did not have a spirit. Voila! With a swiftly thrust of his hand, the spear pierced forward with frightening momentum. Tzzzzzzzzzz. A piercing shrill echoed loudly from the friction between the spear and the surrounding air. Even though Zhongxian rarely practiced his spear arts, the fact that Zheng Yang's spearmanship had originated from him was something that should not be neglected. His Heaven's Path spear art was nowhere weaker than his swordsmanship. Gu. In the face of Zhongxian's spear, the Qingtian emperor showed no signs of dodging at all. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and clashed with the incoming spear with a flick of his black fingernail. Judging from how resilient and sharp the Qingtian emperor's fingernail was, it seemed to be some kind of powerful artifact as well. Upon making contact, Zhongxian suddenly felt immense strength surging from the tip of his spear toward his arms, and he swiftly retreated several steps. Had it been anyone else, the multiple clashes with the Qingtian emperor surely would have left injuries piling up on them, rendering them weaker and weaker. However, as one who possessed the Heaven's Path Shenqi, Zhongxian was able to heal any injuries at an astounding speed. Even if he sustained an injury, it would not remain for long. As such, at least for the time being, he was still able to maintain his fighting prowess at its peak. However, the Golden Origin Cauldron and the Glacier Rain Sword were different. Even with their collaboration, they still were not a match for the powerful Qingtian emperor without Zhongxian's pointers. The situation really did not look good at all. Putting aside the question whether Zhongxian had sufficient zhenqi to drag the battle out or not, once the Golden Origin Cauldron and Glacier Rain Sword were defeated, he would be forced to face the two Qingtian emperors simultaneously, and there was no way he would stand a chance in that situation. This secret art is really troublesome to deal with. Zhongxian thought grimly as he took a few steps back to heal up his injuries. Since you have already forced me to use my art of cloning, there's no way I can allow you to walk out of here alive. The Qingtian emperor gritted his teeth and roared as he charged toward Zhongxian once more. With a flick of his fingers, he sent 5 surges of sword qi toward Zhongxian, intending to rip him into pieces. On the other hand, Zhongxian swiftly activated the unbounded Voyager to flee several dozen meters back. Hoo! But barely after Zhongxian escaped from the area, the Qingtian emperor arrived before him once more to launch his second wave of assault. To his surprise, the divided Qingtian emperor was actually able to move at speed that was in no way inferior to his. Zhongxian repeated the same cycle 8 more times, even abruptly changing his directions from time to shake off the Qingtian emperor, but his efforts were to no avail. This left cold sweat trickling down his back. All of a sudden, another Qingtian emperor appeared right in front of him. To Zhongxian's astonishment, the Golden Origin Cauldron's massive feet were already twitching on the ground uncontrollably, seemingly pummeled badly by the other Qingtian emperor. From the looks of it, it did not seem like it would be able to battle for some time. On the other hand, The glacier rain sword was stabbed deeply into the ground, not moving at all. You, as an emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe, don't you think that it's embarrassing for the two of you to gang up on me? This is unfair. Zhong Xian spat through gritted teeth as he slowly backed away. Unfair? Ha 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 ha. The two Qingtian emperors burst into laughter simultaneously. With a cold voice, they sneered, "Feel free to clone yourself too, no one is stopping you." "But I don't know such a secret art," Zhong Xian protested. The two Qingtian emperors scoffed coldly. "Is that supposed to be any of my business? You only have your own ignorance and powerless to blame." After saying those words, the duo exerted their strength simultaneously, and once again, the space around Zhong Xian seemed to have frozen. As if an insect stuck in a spider's web, he found himself unable to move. He had to exert his full strength before he was able to struggle free of the spatial seal and escape. However, before he could get far, the two Qingtian emperors had caught up with him. Peng! A powerful blow struck Zhong Xian from behind, sending him crashing forcefully into the wall. Pu! Swiftly pushing himself out from the wall, Zhong Xian turned around to face the Qingtian emperors warily, as if preparing himself to deal with whatever other attacks they went at him with. However, at this point, his body was already shaking uncontrollably from the severe wounds that he had sustained, and it seemed as if he already had a single foot in the grave. "At most, we'll just die together." Despaired, Zhong Xian bellowed furiously as he gathered his zhenqi furiously, as if intending to explode himself. "Trying to explode yourself? Do you think we'll give you an opportunity to do so?" The two Qingtian emperors immediately rushed forward to stop Zhong Xian, but before they could make a move, they felt an instantaneous, splitting pain in their heads before their heads exploded simultaneously. Peng! Flashy and glamorous, just like the fireworks. As the crimson rain died down, two fists finally appeared behind the necks of the Qingtian emperors. You! As if unable to believe that their heads had been destroyed, the souls of the Qingtian emperors swiftly turned around to see the culprit behind the assault. It was none other than Zhong Xian. Following which, they saw the exploding Zhong Xian coming up to them with disdain in his eyes. "What is there to boast about a mere clone? You make it sound as if it's a big deal. These days, no one dares leave home without a clone or two with them." Chapter 12:19 The Qingtian Emperor bursts into tears. It was already hard enough to deal with a single Qingtian Emperor, and dealing with two of them simultaneously was nearly impossible. As such, Zhong Xian had slowly made the necessary preparations. First, he had his clone conceal himself in the hall before retreating again and again so as to make the Qingtian emperors lower their guard, as well as to lure them where he wanted them. The final explosion served as a distraction for the duo, buying sufficient time for his clone to launch an assault. It sounded simple on the surface, but it was actually much more complex than it sounded. In order to put up a convincing act to fool the Qingtian emperors, he had needed to carefully decide which techniques he should use, how far he should escape, where he should stop, and from which angle his clone launch should launch his assault to not be noticed. It was only due to such careful calculation that the plan worked out in the end. At the same time, it was also fortunate that his clone had been cultivating hard in recent days, granting it strength far greater than the main body, allowing it to destroy the bodies of the two Qingtian emperors with ease. Otherwise, with just him and the Golden Origin Cauldron, the chances of victory would have been extremely slim. Damn it! The corpses of the Qingtian emperors fell to the ground with a loud plop. Following which, with a furious roar, two souls oracles rose from the two bodies. The primordial spirits of the Qingtian emperors. Astonishingly, the division was not just limited to the Qingtian emperor's body, even his primordial spirit had split in two as well. Boom! As soon as the two primordial spirits appeared, the surrounding air suddenly seemed to have grown even more viscous, as if one was standing in quicksand. Putting aside making a move, just remaining upright would have been a struggle for any ordinary cultivator. As soul oracles, the primordial spirits of the Qingtian emperors were far stronger than their bodies, allowing them to exert strength far greater than before. All of a sudden, the two primordial spirits suddenly began fusing back together. It appeared that the Qingtian emperor's art of cloning had become unstable with the destruction of both of the bodies, making it difficult for the primordial spirits to maintain their divided form. The fusion was completed in an instant. Seeing how his advantage had been lost, the Qingtian Emperor's face turned incredibly livid. With a wrathful bellow, he charged toward Zhongxian once more. "You bastard, how dare you destroy my body? I'll make you pay the price for your actions." He had thought that he would have been able to kill Zhongxian with ease once he activated his trump card, the art of cloning. Yet, not only did he fail to kill that brat, his physical body had even ended up being destroyed in the process. At this moment, the sheer frustration and rage in his mind were enough to make him erupt. If he had only been angry at Zhongxian for undoing his many years of efforts and preparations before, at this very moment, there was nothing else in his mind but the overwhelming loathing he had for Zhongxian. Before the other party's threat, Zhongxian simply chuckled leisurely. "Is that the only line you know? You have already said it quite a few times, but aren't I still alive and kicking over here? Cut the crap." Not even bothering to avoid the Qingtian Emperor's attack, he thrust his palm forward instead. Tzzzzzzzzzzzz. As soon as the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit came into contact with Zhongxian's palm, a sizzling reminiscent of metal coming into contact with sulfur filled the hall. In the blink of an eye, a massive hole had been corroded open in the center the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit. The Qingtian Emperor cried in agony as he hurriedly retracted his hand. At the same time, he stared at Zhongxian with a disbelieving look. "Why you?" Even back when he was in his physical body, he had still managed to overpower Zhongxian easily, but he had unfortunately been done in by the young man's schemes in the end. Given that, he should have been able to deal with the young man even more easily now that he was in his primordial spirit form. Yet, why would it turn out like that? Why did his primordial spirit end up being corroded instead? If you were just an ordinary primordial spirit, I might not have been able to deal with you so easily. But since you are a soul oracle, I happen to have 100 ways to end your life. Paying no heed to the other party's shock, Zhongxian smirked haughtily as he swiftly shrouded the entire hall with his Heaven's Path Zhenqi, not intending to give the Qingtian Emperor any opportunity to escape at all. Typically speaking, with his current strength, he should not have been a match for the primordial spirit of a leaving aperture realm advanced stage cultivator. However, the Qingtian Emperor just happened to be a soul oracle, resulting in the yin energy in his primordial spirit being far more concentrated compared to ordinary primordial spirits, and the Heaven's Path Zhenqi happened to be the very nemesis of that. Just as a metal hammer would eventually be corroded into nothing no matter how hard it pounded on sulfur, as powerful the Qingtian Emperor might have been, there was no way he stood a chance against the Heaven's Path Zhenqi. "Damn you!" The Qingtian Emperor glared at Zhongxian coldly. At this moment, he finally realized how far he had screwed up. With his superior strength, he had wielded the decisive advantage at the very start of the battle, but with the scheming of the young man, his advantage had gradually been lost throughout the course of the battle, and now, he was in the weaker position. Glancing at the Zhenqi shrouding the entire hall, his face turned ghastly pale. At this point, while he could not understand the reason behind it, he had already come to realize that the Zhenqi in the area had the ability to corrode his primordial spirit. If he attempted to charge out of the encirclement, he would only wear himself thin and worsen his position. "Even if I die here, I'll bring you down with me." Gritting his teeth furiously, the Qingtian Emperor roared furiously as he focused his soul energy together and charged at Zhongxian once more. At this point, it was already a do-or-die situation. If he could kill the young man before his primordial spirit corroded into nothing, he might still stand a chance at survival. Even if he did die in the end, he would never be able to rest in peace if he did not bring the young man down with him. Boom! Exerting his full strength once more, the Qingtian Emperor cast another spatial seal around Zhongxian, restricting the latter's movements. "You sure are a resilient insect. I guess the emperors of the otherworldly demonic tribe aren't just for show after all," Zhongxian remarked coldly as he released a powerful burst of Zhenqi, breaking the spatial seal around him. After which, he swiftly raised his palm to face the Qingtian Emperor's assault. Tzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. That palm strike infused with the Heaven's Path Zhenqi swiftly clashed with the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit, producing yet another series of sizzling sound. With a cry of agony, the the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit shrunk significantly. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Gritting his teeth tightly, the Qingtian Emperor cursed furiously. The greatest trump card of a leaving aperture realm expert was their control over the environment, allowing them to limit the movements of their enemies. Yet, for some reason, the young man was able to break his spatial seal easily as if it was nothing at all. With a swift motion, the Qingtian Emperor distanced himself away from Zhongxian. After which, he gathered his energy on his fingertip before blasting it toward Zhongxian. He was thinking that as long as he could distance himself from the young man, it would be more difficult for the young man's Zhenqi to get to him. Wang. The burst of energy from the Qingtian Emperor was incredibly concentrated, and it traveled so quickly that its motion was hardly discernible with the eye. Peng. As expected, Zhongxian failed to withstand the burst of energy, and it struck him squarely in his chest, sending him flying into the distance. Using the same method, the Qingtian Emperor also sent Zhongxian's clone flying as well. Without his Heaven's Path Zhenqi to suppress the Qingtian Emperor's strength, there was no way Zhongxian would be able to face the leaving aperture realm advanced stage Soul Oracle head-on. Seeing how the Qingtian Emperor was able to come up with a countermeasure against him so quickly, Zhongxian's face turned grim. As expected of an old monster who has lived for countless years, he sure does react swiftly. While using his Heaven's Path Zhenqi to heal his injuries, he swiftly reanalyzed his current situation. The further he spread out his Heaven's Path Zhenqi, the less concentrated it would be. While it was true that he would be able to defeat the Qingtian Emperor if he just bombarded the entire hall with his Heaven's Path Zhenqi, the problem with that was that the consumption of Zhenqi would be insane as well. He might very well deplete his entire Zhenqi reserves for that. Considering how he had not even met Vicious yet, depleting his Zhenqi reserves at this point would likely be an unwise move. What should I do? Zhongxian thought with a frown. However, the Qingtian Emperor did not intend to grant him any time to think. With a furious roar, he sent another burst of energy toward him. Woo! The sheer accumulation of power burst through the air, seemingly wanting to tear a hole through the world. Having anticipated the move, Zhongxian easily dodged the attack with a swift side step. Just when he was about to counterattack, a thought suddenly came to his mind. A smile slowly crept up his lips, and he flicked his wrist. Bam! An altar fell onto the ground. Zhongxian placed his palm on it lightly. Hula! The inscriptions atop the altar swiftly lit up, and a powerful suction force began pulling the primordial spirit of the Qingtian Emperor in. Feeling the powerful suction force pulling him in, the Qingtian Emperor widened his eyes in astonishment. What? Isn't that the altar that I set up in Qingyuan City? That was the altar that his clone had set up in Qingyuan City to kill master teachers and nab their souls. Who would have thought that the other party would actually bring it with him and even use it against him? Supposedly, that altar could only be activated with the slaughter of Zhenqi unique to otherworldly demons. Furthermore, the formation for it was extremely complicated. Even he would require much preparation in order to activate the altar once, and the energy consumption was massive. So how in the world did that fellow do it so easily? Noticing something, the eyebrows of the Qingtian Emperor shot up in astonishment. Wait a moment, he's using his own Zhenqi to activate the altar. The other party was actually using his own Zhenqi to fuel the altar. Just how much Zhenqi did he possess to squander it like that? The Qingtian Emperor was convinced that Zhongxian would not be able to maintain the activation of the altar for too long, but as time passed, he found the suction power from the altar growing stronger and stronger. Eventually, he was unable to hold on anymore, and his primordial spirit was swiftly dragged all the way to the top of the altar. The altar was crafted using a unique method from Vicious. Those whose soul or primordial spirit was still grounded by a physical body might have been able to withstand the suction force of the altar, but with only his primordial spirit remaining at the moment, the Qingtian Emperor stood no chance at all. The Qingtian Emperor struggled furiously as he was helplessly dragged toward the altar, but it was to no avail. At this point, he suddenly saw two Zhongxians charging up to him before launching a furious barrage of attacks on him. Elbow, palm strike, punch, kick. Every single possible attack that could be launched by a human rained down on him relentlessly. Damn it! With a cry of anger, The Qingtian Emperor roared furiously as he released an overwhelming burst of energy with his full might. That burst of energy had sapped his Zhenqi and soul energy significantly, but it did free him from the suction of the altar. As soon as he broke free, he immediately stretched his claws toward Zhongxian to snap his neck. But before his hands could reach, the two Zhongxians had already retreated 100 meters away. Naturally, the next course of action that the Qingtian Emperor would do was destroy the altar beneath him, but to his horror, the young man had already stowed the altar into his storage ring. The Qingtian Emperor's face immediately turned livid. He swiftly gathered his energy on his fingertips once more and launched a barrage of attack on the two Zhongxians, only to see them whipping out the altar once more to activate it. Voila! He was swiftly dragged over, and the two Zhongxians charged over to pummel him. You bastard! I swear that I'll rip you into pieces. Feeling so furious that he could have exploded on the spot, the Qingtian Emperor tapped into the reserves of his strength and successfully broke free of the altar once more. However, again, he found that the two fellows had already fled to somewhere even further away to activate the altar. Pada! He was pulled over once more, and yet another barrage of attacks fell on him. The cycle continued a few more times, and the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit grew smaller and smaller. Feeling that he would dissipate at any moment, the Qingtian Emperor finally burst into tears. How can there be someone that shameless in the world? He had seen plenty of capable and powerful master teachers in his time, but this was the first time he was seeing someone as shameless as that. Chapter 12:20 Listen to me. The golden origin cauldron, which had been smashed into the ground previously by the Qingtian Emperor, finally came to and struggled to its feet. Upon seeing the sight above, it could not help but shudder in fear. Master, sure is vicious. It had thought that after fusing with the black gold crystal ore and undergoing 3 lightning ordeals to reach leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage, it could finally be considered an expert among experts. Yet, who would have thought that it was still a level beneath its master? For someone as keen, resourceful, and powerful as the Qingtian Emperor to be reduced to such a state, it really felt like a dream. The Golden Origin Cauldron made a mental note that no matter what it did in the future, it should never cross its master regardless of the situation. The cauldron did not even dare imagine what kind of plight it would be put into if it did so. Enough! After a series of pummeling, Zhongxian finally waved his hand. Upon hearing those words, his clone had a look of disappointment on his face. Spending day after day trapped within the myriad ant hive nest, it was not easy for it to have an opportunity to come out and pummel someone. It had not even had its fair share of fun yet when everything suddenly came to a halt. At this moment, the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit was already as weak as it could get, and it seemed as if it would dissipate at any moment. It had sustained significant damage from the art of cloning, and the relentless pummeling from the two Zhongxians had really done nothing to help. Not only had his primordial spirit grown incredibly weak, his mind was also on the verge of snapping as well. I will kill you. Despite his frailty, the eyes of the Qingtian Emperor were still burning with hatred. Yes, I know. There's no need to get anxious now. I'll just do a quick soul search on you, so bear with it. It'll be over before you know it. Zhongxian consoled as he tapped his finger on the glabella of the Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit. No. Seeing that Zhongxian was going to use soul search against him, the eyes of the Qingtian Emperor widened in fright. He immediately struggled, wanting to escape, but the suction power of the altar was simply too strong. His primordial spirit just would not move an inch no matter what he did. The struggling of the Qingtian Emperor was interfering with his soul search, so Zhongxian turned to his clone and instructed, "Clone, come over and help me hold him in place. I'll conduct a soul search on him to get the intelligence we need first." Sure thing. Excited, Zhongxian's clone immediately hopped over to the Qingtian Emperor and sent a forceful kick to the latter's head. Paji. In an instant, the emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe was reduced to a shape on the altar. With an indignant look in his eyes, he continued struggling with all his might, but things simply would not go as he wished. Still being disobedient here, eh? Shaking his head, Zhongxian's clone raised his hand and yelled, "Sword!" Hula! The glacier rain sword immediately flew into his grasp. If you dare move once more, I'll pierce my sword right through your throat." The Qingtian emperor immediately froze on the spot, not daring to move at all. "That's more like it. Good boy." Nodding in satisfaction, Zhongxian's clone turned to Zhongxian and said, "All right, it's done. You can conduct a soul search on him now." Zhongxian placed his finger onto the Qingtian emperor's glabella before sending a sliver of his consciousness in. Just as he was about to examine the latter's memories carefully to see where Vicious was, the entire hall suddenly began shaking. Following which, an eerie voice boomed. Who would have thought that a celestial master teacher would actually be skilled in the arts of the soul oracles too? If I spread this news, do you think that the humans will continue accepting you as one of their own, or will they send their strongest experts to assassinate you? Following that, a cold laughter echoed in the air. The voice seemed to sound right within Zhongxian's ears, making it impossible for him to discern the source of it. "You are finally showing yourself, huh?" Halting his soul search, Zhongxian swiftly shoved the altar and Qingtian Emperor's primordial spirit into his storage ring before standing back up. He had known that Vicious was definitely in the area, and the soul search was actually just a ploy to lure the latter out. Despite being only at Saint 3 Dan Pinnacle, you were able to defeat the Saint 5 Dan Advanced Stage Qingtian Emperor. I must say, as expected of a celestial master teacher. Just like Kongsha back then, you do have a unique insight into cultivation and combat that far surpasses other geniuses, Vicious remarked meaningfully. However, you are still too young. In your current state, it's simply too easy for me to kill you. Right after saying those words, Zhongxian suddenly felt the world spin around him. A powerful might tugged at his soul forcefully, nearly dragging it out of his body. This. Zhongxian's face darkened. It was the same feeling that he had felt from the massive eye he had encountered back when he was in Chen Zhe's residence. It felt as if he had lost control of his soul, and the slightest mistake in his control would result in his soul being devoured whole. Driving his heaven's path Zhenqi furiously, Zhongxian struggled desperately against the powerful suction force. However, the other party was simply too powerful. In the blink of an eye, it felt as if a black hole had materialized right before him, as if it would not rest until it devoured him whole. Hula. Eventually, Zhongxian's soul was dragged out of his body and pulled over to the altar. "This. What a huge soul you have." Vicious was visibly stunned by what he saw. Skilled in the arts of the soul oracles, the strength of his soul was extraordinary as well. Yet, who would have thought that the young man before him would have one that was even bigger than his? This had already surpassed a level that he could comprehend. However, the shock only lasted for a moment. Swiftly regaining his composure, a pair of eyes suddenly appeared from the other end of the black hole, staring at Zhongxian silently. "You should know that I have the ability to kill you easily." "I don't deny that," Zhongxian replied calmly. "Good. I like dealing with candid people," Vicious replied. "Since that's the case, you should also know that the reason I have spared you for so long is because you still have some value to me." "You want me to free you?" Zhongxian asked. "It's indeed easier to speak with the intelligent. As long as you free me, I can spare you this once," Vicious said. "You will spare me? Do you mean that you will allow me to exist as a soulless metal humanoid or your puppet as soon as you are freed from your restraints?" Zhongxian scoffed. "You don't have any other options," Vicious replied frankly, not denying the matter. "Since I'll face death regardless of whether I help you or not, tell me, why should I free you?" Zhongxian shook his head. Vicious harumphed coldly. "You don't have any choice in this matter. If you want to see all of the master teachers and combat masters who have accompanied you here dying before your eyes, feel free to turn me down." Following which, the black hole suddenly stirred, and a screen appeared. It was Hall Master Xing and the others. At this moment, they were still surrounded by countless soulless metal humanoids. Those guarding the outer perimeter, Division Head Wei, Division Head Liao, and the others had already sustained considerably injuries, and they seemed to be drained as well. They had been chosen to participate in this expedition for the superior strength they possessed compared to their peers, but against so many puppets who felt neither pain nor exhaustion, it was inevitable that they were eventually worn down. Who? At this moment, a mechanism suddenly whirred into action within the room, and a figure slowly walked out, heading toward Hall Master Xing and the others. The figure was a soulless metal humanoid as well, but it wielded strength far greater than the others in the room. Astonishingly, it was a leaving aperture realm intermediate stage puppet. Powerful zhunqi burst from its acupoints, seemingly flaunting the superior strength that it wielded. Your comrades already have their hands full dealing with the other soulless metal humanoids. If I make a move as well, how many of them do you think will remain alive at the end of this? The pair of eyes continued staring intently at Zhongxian, as if peering right into his thoughts, as it sneered coldly. You don't have much time left to make your decision. Following which, the soulless metal humanoid on the screen dashed right into Hall Master Xing's group. Everyone, stand your ground. Alarmed, Division Head Wei bellowed anxiously. However, before he could finish his words, the soulless metal humanoid had already sunk its palm into his chest. Peng! Division Head Wei was immediately sent flying into the wall, coughing up huge mouthfuls of blood. His abrupt absence resulted in an opening in the formation. Before the others could move to close the opening, that fellow charged toward the second strongest of the group, Division Head Liao, to incapacitate him. Catcher. Under normal circumstances, even against a leaving aperture realm intermediate stage expert, as long as Division Head Liao exerted his full strength, he would at least have been able to withstand a few blows and buy some time. However, after the long battle with the soulless metal humanoids, his zhunqi and stamina were already reaching their limits. As a result, he ended up caving in within a single blow, collapsing weakly to the ground. In the blink of an eye, 2 members of their group had been incapacitated. You bastard! I'll kill you! Seeing that 2 of his companions had been severely wounded, Zhong Zhouxia roared furiously. Whipping out the 2 Saint intermediate tier sabers he had, he began launching a barrage of attacks toward the soulless metal humanoid. However, seemingly expecting Zhong Zhouxiao's move, the soulless metal humanoid raised its hand and tapped his finger forward. Wang! The swords suddenly froze in midair. With a flushed face, Zhong Zhouxiao struggled with all his might, but he found that he was not able to move at all. It was as if someone had glued him to the floor. In the end, he was only a primordial spirit realm primary stage cultivator. As powerful as he might have been, the gap between him and a leaving aperture realm intermediate stage cultivator was simply too great. After being pinned on the spot, the soulless metal humanoid sneered coldly as it walked forward and struck Zhong Zhouxiao with its palm. Pada! Zhong Zhouxiao was immediately sent flying. However, while he was flying in midair, a brilliant light suddenly shimmered from his chest, and his retreating figure abruptly came to a halt. It seemed like some kind of protective amulet or the sort had been activated. As an offspring of the Zhong clan, he still had a few protective artifacts on hand in case he met with danger. Interesting. However, if you think that the amulet will be able to stop me, I'll have to say that you are being hopelessly optimistic. Vicious scoffed. Under his control, the soulless metal humanoid bent its knees before abruptly leaping up. Then, with a series of fluid motions reminiscent of a musician playing a zither, a barrage of attacks was launched toward Zhong Zhouxiao. Wong 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 wong. The activated protective amulet shielded Zhong Zhouxiao well, shielding him from harm. However, as the barrage of attacks continued, the radiance of the protective barrier gradually grew dimmer and dimmer. No matter how powerful a protective barrier was, it was limited by the energy it harnessed. It might have been able to withstand a powerful blow or two, but too many times, it would eventually reach its limit. Peng! The protective barrier finally shattered, and just like the others, Zhong Zhouxiao was struck forcefully into the wall, sustaining severe injuries in the process. After subduing the 3 stronger members of the group, the rest was simple. It did not take long for the 3 elders whom Wu Shi brought over to be incapacitated as well. Other than the severely wounded Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing, it could be said that their entire group had been wiped out. With a cold smile on its lips, the soulless metal humanoid slowly walked over to Hall Master Xing with its palm raised, seemingly ready to kill the other party at any moment. Knowing that the 2 severely wounded individuals wouldn't be able to withstand the might of his soulless metal humanoid's attacks, Vicious glanced at Zhongxian provocatively. How about it? Submit to me, and I can spare your comrades. As a celestial master teacher, Surely you won't watch your comrades die one by one before your eyes, right? The principles of the master teachers were not just mere guidelines. Rather, it was a faith that they embraced, and their state of mind was built upon this faith, giving them the strength to stand resiliently in the face of fear and despair. However, if a master teacher abandoned their principles and watched idly as their comrades die before their eyes, it could potentially lead to a collapse of their faith and their state of mind, making it difficult for them to make any advancement in their cultivation in the future. Watch my comrades die before my eyes. Hearing vicious words, Zhongxian abruptly burst into laughter. Of course I won't. You. Bewildered by Zhongxian's bizarre outburst, Vicious was just about to speak when the scene within the screen abruptly changed. The severely wounded Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing abruptly leaped up from their positions to attack simultaneously. Peng. Their attack was extremely abrupt, and the soulless metal humanoid was simply too close. As a result, before the soulless metal humanoid could react, a massive hole was plunged through its chest, causing its ribcage to shatter entirely. Vicious was completely taken aback by the course of events. At that moment, Zhongxian suddenly spoke. How about it? Submit to me, and I can consider sparing your soulless metal humanoid. As a person who once successfully trapped Kongsha, surely you won't watch your comrades die one by one before your eyes, right? Vicious. Chapter 12:21 Brain and Eyes. It had been hard for them to hold themselves back as they watched their comrades being sent flying by the leaving aperture realm intermediate stage soulless metal humanoid one after another. However, they knew that the other party wielded strength far greater than them, and they would only have a chance at victory if they bided their time and waited for a suitable opportunity to strike. Fortunately, their efforts had paid off, and they had succeeded in incapacitating the latter. Hulala. Hall Master Xing and Wu Shi got to their feet simultaneously and began clearing up all the soulless metal humanoids in the area. Having undergone the lightning ordeal, the two of them were already true leaving aperture realm experts. On the other hand, these soulless metal humanoids were only at the primordial spirit realm, so there was no way they could possibly stand a chance against the duo. After clearing up the soulless metal humanoids, Wu Shi hurriedly rushed up Zhong Zhouxiao, Division Head Wei, and the others, and taking out a gourd of fine wine, he gave every one of them a mouthful of it. In a few breaths, the wounded crowd had fully recovered from their injuries, and they rose to their feet. Hall Master Xing, Wu Shi. What's going on? You. The crowd could hardly believe what they were seeing. The two of them had clearly suffered grievous wounds from their leaving aperture ordeal, making them too frail to even stand properly, so, how in the world did they suddenly recover from their injuries? Principal Zhong had us pretend to be injured in order to relax the enemies and make them lower their guard. He told us only to make a move at the crucial moment, Hall Master Xing explained. It was true that the leaving aperture ordeal had nearly cost him his life, and even though he had successfully cleared it in the end, he had sustained severe injuries. Under normal circumstances, without months of recuperation, it would have been hard for him to return to his peak. However, the gourd of wine that Zhongxian had fed them was simply too potent. Not only did their physical wounds recover, more importantly, even their wounded primordial spirits had been nursed back to full health. Wu Shi also nodded in agreement. He did not drink the wine, but Zhongxian had infused his zhenqi straight into his body. As a result, he had already recovered from the injuries as soon as he sustained them. Principal Zhong headed over there earlier. Let's go over to take a look as well. Having just overcome a near-death experience, everyone was filled with many complex emotions within. Nevertheless, knowing that there was an enemy that they needed to overcome ahead, they decided to head on without wasting any time. After seeing all of that, Vicious' expression turned livid. He had planned to trigger Hall Master Xing's lightning ordeal in order to make them lose their strongest fighter, but who would have thought that his efforts would end up bolstering the other party's forces instead? You knew that I would dispatch some men to deal with them? Vicious looked at Zhongxian with killing intent in his eyes. I didn't, but as the old adage goes, better safe than sorry, Zhongxian replied calmly. He could not have expected that Vicious would attempt to hold Wu Shi and the others hostage in order to threaten him, but there was no doubt that Vicious would have attempted to harm them. Regardless of how he planned to go about doing so, It was always best to prepare some cards in advance. That way, they would not be utterly helpless in face of an unexpected situation. This was especially so given that they were dealing with an old monster with countless years of experience. They might not have won in a direct battle of wits, but the least they could do was win in terms of preparation. Seeing the fearless look on Zhong Xian's face, Vicious lashed out furiously. Very well. Do you really think that I dare not kill you? Of course you want to kill me, but are you able of doing it in your current state? Zhong Xian chuckled softly as he shot a sideward glance at Vicious. If you are really able to do it, you would have done it long ago. You wouldn't be wasting words with me here. Prior to meeting the eyes, he had encountered and fought with two other body parts of Vicious. The first Vicious he had met was the heart. Without any hesitation, the latter had attempted to kill him. It was truly fortunate that he had possessed a golden page, allowing him to seal Vicious and force the heart to submit to him. The second Vicious he had met was the finger. Similarly, the finger also made a move on him without wasting any breath. Considering that they had come from the same origin, it was likely that they would have the same personality. So, how could the first two Viciouses be so ferocious whereas this one would be so kind as to negotiate terms with him? Clearly, the other party was all talk. While the other party kept the matter of killing him by his mouth, the fact was that it was probably easier said than done. Otherwise, he would have long made his move. Alternatively, it could also have meant that Vicious was intending to use his hand to be freed from his restraints. With that in mind, Vicious had been forced to play along with him, coming up with this entire show to force him to submit. But regardless of which reason it was, Zhong Xian had nothing to fear. You. Vicious was taken aback. All right, let's not waste any more time here. I'll be leaving now then. Since he could not be bothered to deal with Vicious any longer, Zhong Xian drove his Heaven's Path soul art. The area around him blurred, and he suddenly found that he was still standing on the spot. Everything that he had just encountered seemed to have been nothing more than a figment of his imagination. Seeing that everything was just as he had deduced, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, back at Chen Zhe's residence, Vicious had made a move on him. From that, it could be seen that Vicious did intend to kill him. Yet, upon arriving at the Ghost Cavern, Vicious had gone to the effort of separating them, triggering Hall Master Xing's leaving aperture ordeal, and putting on this entire act. This had left him rather doubtful. If Vicious was truly as powerful as he made out to be, surely it would not have mattered how powerful Hall Master Xing was. Interfering with Hall Master Xing's lightning aperture ordeal would truly have been a redundant step. Furthermore, he had also pummeled the Qingtian Emperor to the point that the latter was on the verge of passing away, and yet, Vicious still did not appear. Putting all that together, Zhong Xian had roughly come to a conclusion. However, with many things at stake, he had not dared to act recklessly. Thus, he had sought to verify his conjecture. After which, when his soul was dragged away by Vicious, he surprisingly found that Vicious did not make a move on him directly. Instead, the latter began negotiating with him, even trying to take Wu Shu and the others hostage to force him to submit. This very action affirmed all the conjectures that he had come up with previously. Vicious really was not as powerful as he had thought. Perhaps, he might even have been weaker than the Qingtian Emperor. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to keep hiding, controlling the soulless metal humanoid from behind to kill the others. Without a doubt, this was an attempt to portray himself as an expert, winning the battle by forcing him into submission. If it had been anyone else, they might have fallen for his ploy. However, Vicious never would have thought that pretending to be an expert happened to be his field of specialty. He was one who was able to scare away a real Saint Seven Dan expert by acting as Yangshe, so how could he possibly allow others to beguile him with the same tactics? With a quick step, Zhong Xian headed to the wall where the Qingtian Emperor had emerged from, and he placed his hand on it. A moment later, a slight smile surfaced on his lips. Using his finger as a sword, he tapped on the wall 7 times. Catcher! The whirring of a mechanism echoed loudly, and a passageway leading further down appeared. It was completely dark within, and just like before, Zhong Xian found that his spiritual perception was unable to penetrate too far ahead. Zhong Xian turned around and instructed, "Clone, You take the lead. His clone was made of the 9 hearts lotus, so even if he was ground into meat paste or sliced in two, he would still be able to regenerate to his original form. On the other hand, Zhongxian was clearly incapable of pulling that off himself. Even if vicious fighting prowess was not as fearsome as what he had imagined, it would still be wise to proceed carefully. After all, he was a person who had succeeded in winning the Qingtian Emperor's loyalty, so the chances were that he had more tricks up his sleeves. Follow behind me closely. Don't worry, I'll cover you. When it comes down to it, I'll just act as if I'm the main body, and you can assume the role of the clone. Zhongxian's clone shot Zhongxian a disdainful look before raising his head haughtily and venturing into the passageway. To think that the main body would not only be weak, he would even be so spineless. It really was a wonder how he had managed to come this far. Ignoring his narcissistic clone, Zhongxian stowed the golden origin cauldron and the glacier rain sword back into his storage ring before closely following his clone into the passageway. Zhongxian's clone harumphed in displeasure as he walked through the passageway. Let me tell you, as the main body, you should be daring and decisive. If you keep acting so cowardly, not even daring to walk through a mere passageway yourself, as your clone, I'll be deeply embarrassed. Well, it's always good to be careful. The more he heard his clone speak, the more awkward Zhongxian felt. He really was the most pathetic main body in the world. To think that the clone that he had forged would end up being a bigger poser than he was. There were really no words he could find to describe the feeling in his heart. What's there to be careful about? If you're sufficiently strong, there's no need to hesitate before anything. Zhongxian's clone refuted coldly. However, halfway through his words, a powerful force suddenly charged at him. Pada. Before he realized what was happening, his head was already smacked flat like a biscuit. What the hell? Who in the world assaulted me? Roaring furiously, Zhongxian's clone immediately charged in the direction that the attack had come from, only to realize that he had arrived at the end of the flight of stairs. Appearing before him was yet another vast hall. Voila! Several figures suddenly rushed out from the corners of the hall to block their path. Without a doubt, one of them was the culprit behind the flattened head of Zhongxian's clone. At this moment, Zhongxian stroked his chest in relief. If he had not gotten his clone to help lead the way forward, he might have died there and then. Suppressing his shock, he began examining the figures before him closely. There were 4 figures in total, and they were roughly around his height. However, they were neither otherworldly demons nor soulless metal humanoids. These are celestial designer puppets. Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. Upon careful observation, he realized that those figures were actually exquisitely crafted celestial designer puppets. The puppets created by celestial designers were vastly different from those crafted by Wu Yangzi using the otherworldly demon bodies. These puppets were crafted solely out of spare parts, and the powerful engine behind them granted them incredible fighting prowess. From how they had flattened Zhongxian's clone head with a single strike, their fighting prowess was probably on par with Zhongxian, Saint 3 Dan Realm intermediate stage at the very least. Damn it! Zhongxian's clone was so furious that he could have exploded on the spot. He had been acting like expert before the main body and mocking him, but the next moment, his head had ended up being smashed in. If he could convert his frustration and rage into energy, it could have destroyed the entire world. With a furious bellow, his head popped back up, reverting to its original form, before rushing forward to tear apart the puppet that dared to lay its hands on him previously. Peng 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 peng. In an instant, Zhongxian's clone had already traded dozens of blows with one of the puppets, and the powerful shockwave from their collision caused sonic booms to sound in the air. Countless scars were left on the floor and walls, and broken gravel was swept furiously into the air, creating a sight of devastation. Nevertheless, neither of them was willing to back down. Strong. Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up in alarm. Astonishingly, despite its lower cultivation realm, the strength that the puppet displayed was almost on par with the Qingtian Emperor. To make things worse, there were even 3 more standing by the side. If they collaborated with one another, even with his clone and the golden origin cauldron, Zhongxian still would not stand a chance. How about it? Did you really think that I won't be able to kill you? Vicious voice sounded once more. Through these puppets, you mean? Zhong Xian replied coldly. As long as it's effective, does it matter what I use? Vicious sneered in response. So, you are admitting that you are no match for me with your current strength? Zhong Xian scoffed. To first send the Qingtian emperor after him before bringing out these puppets, it seemed like Vicious was really in a weakened state at the moment. Master, I can confirm it now. Here's my brain and my eyes. The Vicious within the Book of Heaven's Path informed Zhong Xian. Your brain and your eyes. UN. The brain is where the memory is stored, so that explains why that fellow was able to retain a greater degree of my memories and recall the matter of trapping Kongsha, the Vicious in the Book of Heaven's Path analyzed. The fighting prowess that my brain and my eyes wield is severely limited. Other than casting some basic soul arts, they are effectively useless in battle. As such, they have no choice but to rely on beguiling others to work for them. This is probably why they are resorting to such schemes instead of dealing with you directly. I see. Hearing Vicious analysis, Zhong Xian nodded in realization. Back then, when he encountered Vicious Finger, the latter had attacked him without any hesitation. On the other hand, this Vicious seemed to be relying on external forces such as otherworldly demons, soulless metal humanoids, or puppets to deal with him. This further supported Vicious' conjecture. Even so, Master, you still must remain careful. While my brain is lacking in fighting prowess, it's still where most of my memories are kept. It won't be easy to kill and possess it. The Vicious in the Book of Heaven's Path remarked worriedly. Even though he had undergone the lightning ordeal and successfully advanced to leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage, he still had no confidence that he would be able to deal with the many means that the other Vicious possessed. The head was bound to retain most of the memories of the former Vicious, granting it a deep understanding of all kinds of techniques. This would allow it to effectively neutralize most offenses and possession attempts. On this aspect, the Vicious in the Book of Heaven's Path, being just a heart and a finger, was at a critical disadvantage. More importantly, the brain is the center of a body, possessing innate authority that grants it near absolute control over the rest of the body. I fear that, if I get too close to him, I might just unknowingly fall under his control, the Vicious in the Book of Heaven's Path revealed worriedly. Putting aside just him, even if the rest of Vicious' body parts were there, they still would have had to obey the commands of the brain. If they rushed at the other Vicious recklessly, not only would he be unable to devour the other Vicious, he might even end up as the other Vicious puppet. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.